The interlocutor notes that there have been no interns in the scroll management department for a long time and asks whether the main character has been interested in scrolls since childhood. The head of the scroll management department leads the new intern down the hallway, praising their department and saying that there is no department better than theirs. The new intern confirms his boss's words with a smile, agreeing with him. The boss wondered when the last time an intern had visited them, guessing it was about a year ago. The intern jokes to himself that it wasn't a year ago, but exactly 407 days ago. With thoughts of the absent-minded manager, who doesn't even remember the intern's last visit, they continue down the corridor. The new intern ponders what else to expect from the scroll management department, mentally calling it absolutely useless. Describes the peaceful, beautiful empire of Polarwood, founded by dragons. There are many ministries in this empire that work to maintain stability and harmony. Finance, medicine, education, and other institutions are managed by civil servants. Among the many ministries, the unique Scroll Management Department stands out, which is subordinate to both the Magic Tower and the Imperial family. The scroll is considered a magical artifact in the form of parchment imbued with one-time magic. Scrolls are usually used in everyday life or for support in battles. Thanks to the simple activation method, even a person without magic can use the scroll, and this is known to commoners. Crown Prince Kiaros Polarwood has a different view and questions whether a scroll management department is needed at all. So the Crown Prince comes up with a plan to send a man to check the department and prove its uselessness and ease of elimination. Thus, I, Kivon Artes, become an intern in the Scroll Management Department to study it from the inside and decide if it is needed. Luckily, it seems pretty simple, because this place is a forgotten corner of the Empire where low-ranking employees work. The department is considered useless and unpopular, but even so, working with the scrolls turns out to be easy. The team leader proudly shows off his skills, and the rest of the team applauds him enthusiastically. Kiwon is surprised that the staff are using the office to play Jenga and mentally notes the level of the team leader. The protagonist ponders to himself where the taxes go and is asked if he has finished the task. Senior staff member Namiya inquires about his progress and apologizes for the wait. The protagonist realizes that the result of the task is exactly the same as before, and Namiya is clearly unhappy about this. Kivon justifies himself by saying that he doesn't have access yet and therefore couldn't start working. Namiya is surprised that the boss didn't give him access, and Kiwon doubts that this was even thought of and waits to see how she will resolve the issue. She is upset about the situation, saying that things like this happen, and the main character considers the department useless. Namiya promises to take care of access, but Kiwon is dissatisfied with her approach and internally rates her work low. Her name is Namiya Lofi. She has been working here for 3 years, but has not received a promotion due to the lack of new employees. Kiwon notes to himself that Namiya Lofi is Baron Lofi's second daughter. He notices that Namiya is talked about as a genius, but he believes that she is simply responsible. Namiya successfully uses magic to open the door for Kivon. Kivon is surprised by what is happening, and Namiya informs him that he can now freely view the scrolls. Kivon doubts the department's professionalism, and Namiya suggests that he read the scroll himself. Namiya finds Kivon suspicious, and he justifies himself by saying that he has never seen Valisa's magic before. Namiya wonders how Kiwon, who is unfamiliar with magic, became an employee of the Empire, and wonders about his possible connections. Kiwon jokes, accusing Namiya of trying to confuse the intern. Team leader Suwon appears and advises them not to relax because of the appearance of a young, handsome intern. Seowon makes some harsh jokes towards Kiwon, reminding him of the recent Jenga game. Namiya looks thoughtful and unreadable, and Kiwon can't figure out what she's thinking. Namiya asks how many protection scrolls there are in the department, and is told 6, after which she is tasked with writing a report on them. Soon is surprised and wonders what these scrolls are for. The next day, the funeral of Countess Torres will take place, which the Crown Prince will attend because he is not an ordinary citizen. Soon explains that although His Highness is quite strong, it is better to prepare for all the unexpected. Namia is worried that if something happens, the department could be in danger since 6 scrolls are not enough to protect them. She believes that more protective scrolls should be prepared for His Highness than before, which surprises Soon. Soon says that the decision has already been made with the boss and asks why Namia is against it. He bluntly states that Namia is just a low-ranking employee. Soon puts pressure on Namia, saying that someone like her is only supposed to follow orders. Namia, clenching her fists, barely holding back her emotions, weakly answers, "Yes, I understand." The clock shows 5:45 p.m., and Kiwon notices that it seems like everyone has already left. Kiwon turns his attention to Namia and wonders why she isn't going home. He notices that Namia has been sitting and continuing to work for a long time, and assumes that it is because of the recent reprimand. Kiwon decides not to think about it so as not to waste time. Namia asks Kiwon to bring 2 boxes of parchment and scroll ink, and he is surprised to receive a task at the end of the day. Namia says that they don't have much time and asks him to hurry without even looking at him. Kiwon replies that working hours are already over. He says that he won't come again from tomorrow, thinking that her indifferent look won't change anything. Namia stops Kiwon by lightly grabbing his sleeve. She asks Kiwon to wait, not letting go of his hand. Kiwon asks Namia what's wrong, but she remains silent and recalls the article of the code according to which a civil servant is obliged to obey the orders of a superior. He thinks about Article 28, which requires a trainee to follow instructions if he has the authority to do so. Kiwon looks at the article about working hours from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and notices that it is now 5:50 p.m. Namia abruptly states that as long as Kiwon has working hours, he is obliged to help her. Kiwon is amazed by the change. Just now, Namia looked indifferent, and now she is completely different. Namia forcefully asks if Kiwon understands the situation, and he is surprised by the type of girl in front of him. The narrative shifts to show the Imperial Palace at night. Kiwon stands by the window and thinks about the events of the day. He remembers the name Namia Lofi, and at this time she carries a hug full of scrolls. Kiwon smiles with interest, realizing the changes happening around him. Kiaros ponders why Namia needs so many scrolls, and whether there is any use for the scroll management department, deciding to find out all about it tomorrow. At the same time, in the scroll management department, someone is grinning under the cover of night. Namia suddenly notices blood on her hand while working with the scrolls. She looks at the blood with surprise and alarm. Namia decides not to delay and plans to finish everything overnight, looking at the long list of tasks. The Polarwood Imperial family has dragon blood and is called the Dragon Kin. Their physical abilities are far superior to humans, and after 25 years of age, they can transform into a dragon. It is said that each member of the family has a special ability, and Kiaros is especially strong among them. These abilities are kept secret and no one knows the details. Even Namia speculates about it. However, what is most important at the moment is that even such a crown prince could be assassinated during tomorrow's ceremony. Namia thinks that she read all this in a book and will explain it in more detail later because she is very busy now. After the death of the crown prince, a war began that lasted 30 years, and the empire was left in ruins, taking many lives. Namia decides to prevent the tragedy and realizes that to do this, she needs to find a certain person and save the crown prince at tomorrow's ceremony. She is ready to act as only she can, working on the scrolls with determination at night. At dawn, Namia is pushing a cart, encountering Kiwon, who is watching her actions. Kiwon is surprised to see that this girl hasn't slept for a second. Namia is mentally happy that she was able to finish everything on time, while the others discuss the strange cart and ask them to ignore it, since it is from the scroll management department. She understands that without Mr. Kiwon's help, she would not have completed the task on time, although his posture irritated her. Namia notices the crown prince in person for the first time and is amazed by it. She is embarrassed to think that the black suit suits the crown prince very well and notes his appearance to herself. Kiaros Polarwood appears at the ceremony accompanied by knights, attracting everyone's attention. A sudden meeting of gazes between Namia and Kiaros occurs, filled with tension. The companion asks Kiaros with concern if everything is okay and receives the answer that everything is fine. Kiaros smiles and says that he is looking forward to Namia's performance. Namia is confused and wonders if Kiaros really just looked at her. The command is given for all knights to stand in line. The captain of the knights proudly calls them White Knights, who obey the Crown Prince personally. The captain reminds his men that they are obliged to protect His Highness from any danger at any cost. One of the knights is worried that Kiaros is capable of defeating 15 knights with his left hand, and wonders if they have a chance to protect him. Another knight adds that Kiaros can dispel a huge boulder with just a light breath of aura, leaving everyone shocked. One of the knights recalls how Kiaros easily ran 100 laps around the training ground, while the others were exhausted after 20. The team of knights feels despondent and wonders if they are useless compared to Kiaros. The captain becomes emotional, shouting at his subordinates that if it's hard for them, then what can we say about him, because he is forced to constantly report to Kiaros. The captain agrees that Kiaros does sometimes instill fear, even with his gaze, despite all the efforts of the crew. Namia watches the knights and thinks that things are not easy for them either. Kiaros, with a touch of irony, says that he is sorry to be a burden to them, but reminds them that he is moving behind their backs, urging them to stop whining and move forward. The motorcade moves off, and greetings are heard in honor of the Crown Prince and wishes for eternal light for the Empire. Kiaros, sitting in the carriage, reflects that he has been very tired in recent days and now feels very tired. He is surprised and tries to understand what is really happening to him. Kiwon and Namia discuss the need for more defensive scrolls and are concerned that 6 will not be enough to ensure safety. A mysterious man with a knife appears among the crowd, threatening even the dragonkin with danger. The captain shouts a warning to the Crown Prince to duck, parrying the attacker's blow. Kiaros is shocked that he only noticed the threat after the captain did. All the knights realize the attack and order to protect His Highness and remove the Crown Prince from the carriage. Kiaros panics and doesn't understand what's happening and feels like he can't feel any magic or his own aura. He realizes that he is deprived of both magic and aura and assumes that this is a dark phase. Kiaros remembers that there can only be one dark phase in a lifetime and remembers that he already experienced it at the age of 10. At this moment, the second attack begins. A hail of arrows flies at the Crown Prince. Namia, gathering her courage, shouts the command to activate the protective scrolls. A coating of magical scrolls is activated around Kiaros, stopping deadly arrows. Namia says with relief that thank God she wasn't late. Kiaros looks at her with surprise and wants to say something. Namia is worried and asks the Crown Prince if he is injured anywhere. The captain orders the attacker to be held and a chase begins in the crowd. The commander of the knights gives orders. 2 remain in place, the rest follow him. The command is given to prevent the attacker from escaping at any cost, and Kiaros thanks Namia by shaking her hand. Namia is amazed at how calm Kiaros is, even though he was just on the verge of death. She thinks it's no wonder why Kiaros is called the son of the Empire. Kiaros asks in surprise if she was the one who activated all the scrolls. Namia realizes that she has used up all her mana by activating 172 scrolls at once and begins to feel ill. The golden-haired knight, pressing his hand to his chest, respectfully acknowledges the courage of his interlocutor. He catches the exhausted girl and anxiously calls her name. The young man panics and notices that the girl has lost consciousness. A confused guy holds a sleeping girl who sleepily mumbles about meat. The girl wakes up in a luxurious hospital bed, enjoying a soft pillow and a healing IV drip. She rises in surprise and looks at the interlocutor who suddenly appeared. Dr. Luca Kless enters the room and checks if the patient is awake. Luca gently scolds her, advising her to get some sleep after using up her mana too much. The doctor is outraged by her poor test results and demands that she establish a proper diet. At night, the girl irritably asks to stop lecturing, and Luca angrily insists on his professional diagnosis. Luca, breathing heavily and holding back his trembling, persuades himself not to lose his temper and asks who paid for the luxurious IV. The girl thoughtfully bites her finger and lets out a drawn-out chuckle in an attempt to figure out an answer. When the Crown Prince is mentioned, the doctor, adjusting his glasses, sheepishly admits that it was he who prescribed this treatment for her. Hearing the indifference, Luca flares up and menacingly waves his hands over the calm patient. The memory takes them to the academy, where she took first place in the entrance exams, ahead of Luca, who is shaking with frustration. Young Luca surrounds his classmate with copies of himself and loudly promises to beat her on the next test. Lying on the pillow, the girl sadly thinks that only then did she manage to be the first. Luca notices that her family hasn't changed at all, and the girl asks in surprise what he's talking about. Waving the test results, the doctor is outraged by her meager one-time meals and asks in bewilderment why, despite her stable salary, she is undernourished. He mentions rumors that Baron Loafi is once again in debt, suggesting that the patient's father has become involved in some dubious scam. Hearing about her father's debts, the girl suddenly jumps out of bed and grabs Luca by the hand, and he blushes and tells her to lie still. Left alone, she sits down on the bed, covers her face with her hand, and complains that she's going to go crazy from worry. Taking a deep breath, the girl decides to calm down and learn more about the situation, admitting that what's done can't be undone. She is glad that her father did not touch her overtime pay, which shocks the outraged Luca. Luca, covering his face with his hand, admits that he doesn't know all the details, but still wants to help her figure it out. In the evening light, he insistently advises her to cut off all ties with Baron Loafi. Luca adds that it is better to stay away from the useless brother Juan because she has her own life. The girl quietly says his name and suddenly asks if he likes her, stunning Luca. A gloomy Luca asks her to repeat it, and she quickly explains that it was a joke. She reproaches him that he shouldn't joke around with something like that. Luca apologizes, grumbles about fair competition, and professionally changes the empty IV. She recalls the official family portrait photo where Baron Loafi presented the newborn twins. In fact, she admits that she is not the Baron's biological daughter. The girl reflects that if she were his own, he would not take her salary and dump one's business. But she needs to get an important thing from the Baron. She vows, having received this treasure, to become rich and find her real father at any cost. In the infirmary, she explains to Luca that until she achieves her goal, she must remain in the Baron's shadow, and he leaves the choice up to her. Luca warns that hiding won't work because everyone already knows that it was she who saved the Crown Prince, and a reward awaits her. He recalls that everyone is talking about how the Crown Prince personally carried her in his arms after the incident. Luke wonders, puzzled, if she wanted to remain invisible. Seeing her calmly sipping her drink, the doctor wonders why she looks so unperturbed. She confidently states that Luke is missing one important detail, and he asks in confusion. Namia puts down her mug and explains with beaming confidence that the scroll management department is far more useless than Luca thought. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince sits back in his office chair, lost in thought. He remembers how the attacker committed suicide and is lost in thoughts about the suspiciously precise timing of the attack. Tapping his fingers over the documents, the prince wonders if the conspirators knew about his impending second eclipse. The young man finds himself thinking that he might be becoming paranoid. Red eyes strain. It seems to him as if the enemies know the future, but the servant's voice pulls him out of his thoughts. Assistant Chase Chudd, apologizing for the interruption, reports a new report. From the conversation, the prince learns that Namia Loafi's merit in saving the heir has been officially recognized, and she deserves a reward. He is stunned by the news that a number of ministers are demanding that the girl be disciplined. The prince is informed of the accusation that Namia has arbitrarily increased the number of protective scrolls, thereby violating the order. The enraged crown prince in his office angrily declares that the courtiers value appearance more than his life. The official, perplexed, says that the management has already decided everything and asks why she is against it. He arrogantly reminds his interlocutor that she is only a low-ranking employee. The crown prince, clasping his fingers, thinks that the true reason for what is happening is much deeper. He agrees to reward Namiya on behalf of the imperial family and to consider the disciplinary case separately. The mage with long silver hair says that he sent a letter to the head of the tower and is waiting for a response. A shocked Deputy Chase screams when he hears that the message is addressed to the tower's leader himself. The panorama of the magic tower explains that it is an independent center of magic, not interested in imperial affairs. The coat of arms with the dragon emphasizes that, despite independence, an official request has still been sent to the tower. An illustration of the crystals of the four ministries shows their upcoming involvement in the investigation. The Scroll Management Department is subordinate to both the Magic Tower and the Imperial family. The Crown Prince reflects that this is the only department with restricted access for the Imperial family and admits that he had previously used a false name, but now even that option is unavailable. An hour later, the prince decides to look through the documents of the Scroll Management Department using magic to summon the data. He is suddenly stopped by a warning that access to the scrolls is prohibited. The initiator is indicated as Namiya Lofi. I remember how Namiya notified her colleagues that one of the department employees would not be showing up from tomorrow. The Crown Prince is surprised that the girl has already blocked access and is mentally amazed at her determination. The prince admits that he expected Namiya to be slow, but she managed to create scrolls overnight and close the path to information. He comes to the conclusion that there is, after all, a capable employee in the Scroll Management Department. The assistant smiles and says that his words may seem bold, but asks if the prince can reward Namiya without the permission of the head of the Magic Tower. The prince admits that he needs the Tower Master's opinion on the matter of the scrolls in order to properly honor Namiya Loafi's services. The young man with golden hair hopes that the chief's answer will be helpful. Another character with a sly expression on his face is mentally irritated with his interlocutor. One character laughs loudly and says he doesn't understand anything, while the other looks surprised at his desk. The main character looks at the girl with trepidation, internally surprised by her courage and experiencing the feeling of love for the first time. The characters begin to argue. One tries to explain that everything is not as it seems. The other assures that he understands everything. The brown-eyed guy promises to keep the affair a secret with a serious look, but is told that he didn't understand anything. The man reflects on the assistant's clumsiness and then calls the next customer. A servant enters and announces that Miss Namiya Loari has come to her senses. The assistant explains that the girl has just woken up and receives orders to prepare for a visit to her. The characters are surprised to learn that Miss Namiya immediately went to the office after waking up, wondering if she was really human. The Scroll Management Department is discussing that someone has created 172 protective scrolls. People are surprised by the number of scrolls, learning that they were used to protect the Crown Prince and consider it a waste. The white-haired girl calmly reflects that everything happened as expected, and that, probably, the others simply do not want to work. Her inner voice reminds her that it asked her to take at least a day off, but she thinks that the vacation can be turned into money. She decides that she is not going to spend her future vacation pay and promises to wait until it accumulates. Her colleagues are whispering that she is making a scene again and that she may not have eaten yet, even though she was recently injured and immediately returned to work. The girl wonders how she can get closer to Crown Prince Kiaros because she knows that her knowledge of the future can be useful. She remembers the day she felt a sharp headache and received memories of the world and future events. It turned out that these events were taking place according to the plot of the book, from which she learned about the impending murder of the Crown Prince and the subsequent war. Despite knowing these tragic events, she does not feel horror or hopelessness and continues to live her normal life. The main character decides that since she prevented the murder of the Crown Prince, she must find out who is behind it and help Kiaros so that there is no war. She understands that although the future has changed, the Crown Prince's enemies will not give up and will continue to persecute him and the imperial family. The girl hopes that the Crown Prince will at least formally thank her and sees this as a chance to get closer, but at that moment she is approached. A colleague abruptly calls her to talk, and the heroine internally prepares for a reprimand. When the girl asks about the necessity, the man angrily says that she has brought shame on the scroll management department. The man is outraged that the number of scrolls in the report does not match the actual number because he said that 6 was enough. She is then accused of using so many scrolls without permission and is told that nothing would have happened to the crown prince without them. But the heroine thinks to herself that without protection, he would have already died. The man angrily advises her to go to the magic tower if she wanted to use magic so much and not work in the scroll department. Then he smiles unkindly and changes his mind. An inner voice sarcastically states that the tower would never accept a loser like her, and the heroine looks thoughtful against the dark aura. The manager says that the main character's grades at the academy were the lowest, and only their department agreed to take her. He suggests that if her grades were higher, she would have gone to the tower, but the heroine mentally answers negatively. The heroine recalls that she always wanted to work with scroll management because she liked them since childhood. The manager accuses her of causing all the mess, and the main character thinks that she will be ordered to write an explanatory note. He shouts and demands that she write an explanatory note, asking if she is even listening, and the heroine notes to herself that everything is as she expected. The heroine tries to justify herself, but is told that she should say sorry, not I didn't understand, and not delay her answer. She apologizes and promises to provide an explanation today, but he notices her sigh and gets even angrier. The manager angrily orders her to leave the department immediately and informs her that she is fired effective today. A new man enters the office and sternly asks since when the manager has been firing employees without imperial permission. The heroine recognizes the crown prince in this man and thinks to herself about it in surprise. The leader realizes that His Highness the Crown Prince stands before him, demanding to know the location of the head of the scroll management department. The main character is surprised and notices that she came to see her savior, but it turned out to be too noisy around. The Crown Prince, addressing Namia Luari, says that the situation has changed. The rest of the staff are amazed by the appearance of the Crown Prince and Mr. Chase. One of the senior workers asks in surprise what brought the son of the Empire to their humble place. The Crown Prince clarifies whether the order to dismiss a competent employee actually came from the boss, and the department head makes a confused excuse about a disciplinary hearing. The heroine notices with alarm that the atmosphere in the room has changed dramatically and mentally awaits the boss's decision. The Crown Prince asks with a serious expression whether anyone thinks it is fair to punish Miss Namiya, who took risks to save him. His calmness and words exude a threat, and everyone feels the powerful presence of the Draconican. The Crown Prince expresses disappointment that this is not what he wanted and turns to his companion, Chase. Having opened the documents, someone states that the management in the department leaves much to be desired. It is revealed that the team leader, Osun, was spending the department's money on his own needs, and the department head was in collusion with him. The heroine is surprised at how much the Crown Prince managed to learn, although he was never particularly interested in their department. The Crown Prince, placing his hand on the table, says that he no longer intends to tolerate this state of affairs. He officially declares that from now on he will head the scroll management department, which surprises the heroine. The department's employees are shocked and worried about what awaits them, waiting for written instructions, and some think that this is the end for them. The Crown Prince notes that Miss Namia Luari should also follow him. Namia admits internally that on the one hand she is glad to be alone with Kiaros, but on the other hand she is worried. The girl is surprised that she did not expect such a turn of events when they walk down the corridor together. She thinks it's awkward to talk while walking behind, looking at Kiaros. Namia is confused, thinking that it's awkward to talk while walking behind him, and does he really want her to walk next to him? Kiaros reflects that it feels strange to do this so openly, but he has no choice. On the surface, the Polarwood Empire appears peaceful and stable, but in reality, things are different. The Emperor is ill and has secretly left the capital to recover his health. The Crown Prince's stepmother is the current Empress, a former mercenary who hates politics. Their son, Prince Jaden, is only 8 years old. The Crown Prince was faced with a lot of worries: diplomacy, politics, an assassination attempt, a useless family, and dark phases. In Namia's imagination, she feels sorry for the prince, but Kiaros himself does not understand what she is thinking. Perhaps that is why Kiaros is inclined to practicality, because he is a rare man without a fiancé and scandals. Namia wonders what all this means now. Namia notices that she is attracting a lot of attention from everyone around her because the Crown Prince is walking with her, and predicts that rumors will spread by tomorrow. She wonders why the Crown Prince called her, just to make her work. Kiaros says he heard about a new intern in the scroll management department, but it turns out he left the next day, leaving Namia wondering if the intern had the tenacity to do so. The heroine remembers that the intern really did give up quickly, but she doesn't dare to say it out loud to the prince. Kiaros says he's sorry it happened and clarifies her feelings. Namia admits that this is her first time having a younger child, but she didn't expect things to turn out this way. She adds that the intern ran away after receiving only 2 tasks, the first of which was sorting scrolls, to which he replied that he did not have access. In the conversation, it turns out that the boss never gave the intern the necessary access, and the other employee doubts that he even thought about it. Namia notes that the intern didn't even complete his task and decided to leave work early. Kiaros, tired of what he heard, asks to wait, trying to comprehend the situation. Kiaros suggests that the intern may have had special circumstances and recalls that only the best from other countries are accepted into the imperial internship, and Namia realizes that he was a foreigner. Namia suddenly feels regret for judging the man without knowing his situation and decides that she should praise him. Kiaros notes to himself that the intern has a pleasant and handsome face, a strong build, and is quite tall. He suddenly realizes that this is a big problem because he deliberately chose an ordinary appearance so as not to attract attention. Kiaros wonders if Namia has fallen in love with him, while Namia wonders if she talks too much about her appearance. The second guy jealously thinks that the intern is probably more handsome than him, and, confused, exclaims, "Your Highness!" This guy, entering the room, catches a strange atmosphere between the heroes and is surprised. Kiaros indignantly asks if they wanted to make an offer, and his interlocutor explains that everything is not so, and Namia asks again about the offer. Kiaros asks why the guy came, and he hesitates, embarrassed, not knowing how to answer. Kiaros allows her to speak in Miss Namia's presence, and she mentally activates her stealth skill, trying not to stand out and be quiet. Namia learns that the conspirator they were looking for was in the palace and is amazed that he has already been found. Kiaros suggests that they immediately capture the criminal and execute him, but Namia is outraged by this decision and worries that it will destroy important evidence. She insists that the conspirator must be left alive for interrogation. Kiaros objects that such a dangerous man cannot be left in the palace. Kiaros clarifies why Namia thinks apprehending the criminal is the best option, and she explains that the procession was accompanied by the Imperial Guard. Namia convinces that those who carried out the attack will not stop because of one failure, and the killers will try again, so the conspirator must be watched and captured when evidence appears. Kiaros listens to her attentively, and Namia notices his changed, thoughtful gaze. The girl realizes that she unwittingly intervened and interrupted the Crown Prince, directly challenging his decision. She panics, thinking that she will definitely be fired for such insolence. To her surprise, Kiaros smiles and says that the test has been passed, and Namia can't believe that she passed. Namia is surprised when she is informed that the conspirator has been found in the palace, and wonders in her mind what to do now. She is emotionally opposed to the idea of immediately executing the criminal, outraged that important evidence that was hard to obtain could be lost. Namia insists that the conspirator must be left alive for interrogation and information gathering. Kiaros objects, considering it impossible to keep a dangerous man in the palace. Kiaros inquires about Namia's motives, and she explains that the procession was accompanied by the Imperial Guard, complicating the situation. Namiya argues that the killers will not stop after one failure. They will look for new opportunities and exchange information, so following the conspirator is the only chance to catch the entire network. Kiaros listens attentively to her arguments, and Namiya notices a change in his attentive gaze. The heroine is alarmed to realize that her opinion has been heard, but now she worries that she has unwittingly interrupted the crown prince and put pressure on him. She imagines that she will definitely be fired for such behavior. Kiaro suddenly admits that Namiya passed the test, and she, stunned, cannot believe her ears. Kiaro suspects that Namiya Lawari may be connected to suspicious people. A picture appears in his mind as if Namiya had originally wanted to gain his trust, wait for the right moment, and kill him. In fact, Kiaros is laughing, and the assistant anxiously asks if he is okay. He muses that it's hard to find out the truth quickly, but he can keep Namiya close and watch her. Kiaros thinks that even in case of danger, he will be able to transform into a dragon, even in the dark phase. He orders the crows to be contacted and information gathered about Namiya Lawari and Baron Lawari, much to the officials' confusion. Shown is the Raven Squad, the prince's reconnaissance group dressed in black cloaks and masks. It is noted that the ravens are scattered throughout the land and can obtain any necessary information for their master, being his hands and feet. The assistant reflects that this is the first time the crown prince is interested in the girl and asks to gather information about her, although he himself always claimed that he does not need a bride. When girls at the reception besiege Kiaros with questions and invitations, he demonstratively refuses them all, causing surprise among those around him. The young man in uniform thinks with delight about how serious His Highness is towards Lady Namiya. The same young man happily reports that he will learn everything about Lady Namiya, and the blonde man watches him with distrust and mentally notes his strange ideas, but admits that he works well. The blonde girl with blue eyes remembers the name Kiaros Polarwood. She is thinking hard that Kiaros is a very difficult person, arranging such tests. The girl presses her fingers to her lips and thinks. The blonde looks away and admits that he is the one who actually takes him seriously. The heroine is scolded as a child for her useless work, and she lowers her head before an adult man. A girl in a dark environment remembers that she lived her whole life for others. In a flashback, the heroine says that the only one who recognized and saw her as she really is was her father, who carefully touches her head. The man suddenly grabs the heroine by the hand, catching her on the run, and she looks at him in surprise. Juan remembers and wonders, pronouncing the name Ajuan with anxiety. The girl angrily tells Juan that she hasn't returned home for 2 days and asks him not to grab her, but just talk. She turns around and thinks that Juan is her headache and her twin on paper, and he irritably tells how long he was looking for her and what he heard about her meeting with His Highness. Juan indignantly asks if she is really telling her only brother to let her go. The girl calmly replies that it doesn't seem like he was looking for her just out of concern. Juan suddenly remembers an urgent document he needs to prepare by tomorrow. The heroine recalls that Juan always shifted his work onto her, and since childhood at the academy, he relied on her. She reflects on the fact that Juan doesn't actually even know what to do at the Ministry of Finance, even though he always acts confident. The girl thinks with irritation that Juan is a complete idiot when he hastily hands her the papers. Juan whispers to the girl that if he is in trouble, she will be too, leaning towards her with a threatening smile. The girl looks ahead and feels very pathetic. She agrees to do the work, knowing it's stupid, but still carries out the assignment to get the papers ready by the evening. Her brother reminds her that her parents were also looking for her and tells her to go home immediately, and the girl leaves tiredly. Baron Loafi recently borrowed money from different people and advises not to be afraid of bankruptcy because of her salary. The girl thinks that the Baron borrows from everyone, perhaps that is why this situation arose. She doesn't want to go home because she knows there will be reproaches and talk only about money. The heroine asks herself to be patient a little longer because there is a reason why she became the head of this terrible family. 15 years ago, she lived in the small southern town of Arbin. The girl recalls that her mothers were not around, and according to her father, she left behind huge debts. The man in the cloak gently refuses the girl candy, saying that not today, despite her persistence. Little Namiya admits that she envied children who had a mother. She remembers a simple but cherished plate of eggs, bacon, peas, and potatoes. A simple lunch with her father made her incredibly happy. The father turns around in shock at her unexpected address. Sitting by her bed, he asks, puzzled, what she is talking about, and she insists that it is true. Namiya recalls that he was an ordinary ethics teacher at a village school. She notes that he now works day and night to pay off his debts, living a hard life. The father, in despair, blames himself, thinking that it would be easier for him without her. Putting his palm to her face, he convinces her that the thought of his daughter always gives him strength, no matter how tired he is. He calls Namiya his most precious treasure. Father asks little Nami how the library went and whether she had fun. The girl thinks and agrees that something funny did happen to her, after all, because she was able to create a scroll. Hearing this, the father is surprised, and Nami confirms that she really did create the scroll. In his thoughts, he doubts whether she really succeeded, but decides to praise his daughter. Nami, beaming with joy, shows a magic scroll that looks like a star sphere. She reminds her father with a smile that he once said he wanted to see the stars. Surprised and touched, her father asks if she really did it, and Nami confirms that she wanted to please him. She explains that she read books about the stars and the creation of scrolls in the library, and after that she was able to implement the idea. Her father is amazed that she created a magic scroll just by reading books, and wonders how this is even possible since there was no magic in their family. Little Nami, with her head down, anxiously wonders if she's made a mistake, and her father quickly assures her that this is not the case at all. Father gently presses Namiya's forehead, thinking how impressed and proud he is of her. Namiya says that when she was in the library, she noticed a boy in the backyard. She remembers that a sword then flew at the boy, and she protected him with a scroll, while her father imagines himself panicking. Her father becomes upset and asks her to ask adults for help in dangerous situations, and Namiya notes that no one was nearby, and thanks to the scroll, no one was hurt. The girl adds that the guy asked her to go to Count Kalto's estate so that he could reward her, and thinks that he is an aristocrat, although he looked suspicious. Her father anxiously asks if she went there, and Namiya replies that she doesn't consider herself an unreasonable child. Her father is suspicious of her words when she assures him that, of course, she did not go there. The girl thinks that if this were true, it would be worth going to ask the Count to marry her off to a rich man. Her father is shocked by her words, and she thinks that maybe she should go there tomorrow for the opportunity to pay off her debts. Namiya's father hugs her tightly, telling her that she cannot marry for profit, but rather that the marriage should be for love, with someone she truly loves. The father sadly asks for forgiveness for having to raise his beloved daughter in such difficult conditions, and Namiya hugs him tightly and says that she understands everything. Father suddenly remembers that he needs to know something, but Namiya asks him to promise never to say such hard words again. They make a promise to each other by interlocking their little fingers. After this, the father brings Namiya to Baron Loafi's house and asks him to take care of her until he returns, and then be sure to send her to the academy. The head of the Lofi family, Alexander Lofi, reluctantly agrees. The father assures that Namiya will be provided with money while living in the capital. Alexander wonders why there was no contact with his father, asks where he got the money, and his father thinks whether it is worth drawing up a contract. The father is worried, and Alexander asks to add Namiya to the family register and later send her to study at the academy. Before parting, the father wishes his daughter health and success in everything. He bids Namiya a tender farewell, saying that her uncle will take care of her. Namiya anxiously asks her father where he is going, but he cannot find the words to answer. When Namiya asks this question, her father only smiles weakly in response. She shyly asks to forget, and her father asks not to worry about him and take care of himself. The father smiles goodbye and promises to return, but in fact he disappears for 15 years after that. After the disappearance of the father, the Baron and Baroness began to live in luxury and used the father's departure as a pretext to exploit Nami. Namia stands in front of the door and thinks that she needs to quickly sort out all the matters and leave here. The Baron and Baroness, being together, hear a knock at the door and someone interrupts them. Namia comes in and is greeted back looking serious. The Baron and Baroness invite Namia to come in and sit down before talking. Namia sits down in a chair and confidently says that she heard rumors that money was taken in her name and invested, and since she was invited, it means that things are not going well for them. A girl reproaches a man for his lack of nobility. He becomes indignant and loudly expresses his dissatisfaction, and another girl is perplexed by their argument. The man claims that his information is reliable, but cannot answer the question of its origin, and the girl suspects that he received it from a dubious source. The man irritably demands that they stop talking, assuring that he would not like such a situation, and is surprised by the impudence of his interlocutor. The girl thinks that she doesn't feel like a part of this family, and the man says that he is not acting of his own free will, but for the sake of the family. The man claims that if everything works out, they will be flush with cash, and the girl thinks that he has gone crazy and wants to leave as soon as possible. The man says that if he has nothing more to say, he will leave, but they try to stop him. The girl is exclaimed to marry Howard Alton, which she is clearly shocked by. The man explains that the eldest son of the head of the Alton Trade Guild said that he liked her. The girl is shown a photograph of Howard Alton, explaining that he is a slightly older but handsome man, although she believes that he looks considerably older than her. The girl states that she wants to continue working and admits that she does not like Howard Alton at all, asking not to build false illusions. The woman is surprised by the girl's mood and asks to meet the man at least once, emphasizing that he divorced 14 years ago and has had no one. The girl remembers that this man got divorced because of domestic violence and thinks that for old people such a person is really remarkable. The girl irritably asks where else she can find a better man, and in her thoughts suggests that her aunt marry him herself, since he is so good. The girl says that if the conversation is over, she leaves, reminding them that the debts of adults are their responsibility, and asks them not to try to sell her for repayment. The girl is called by name and asked if she is not interested in where her father went. The man slyly declares that he will tell everything about her father if she agrees to the wedding, and assures that this way she will change her fate by using the money for the search. The man rejoices, asks if she agrees, and is mentally confident that the girl, who cares about her father, will not refuse, and the family's debts will be paid off. The girl calmly announces that she is leaving this house, to the man's surprise. The girl explains that he heard everything correctly and sees no reason to make his life unbearable by announcing his decision. The girl figuratively says that she now has a new lifeline, huge and strong, and shows a young man next to her who supports her. The girl says that she has no more business in this house and heads for the exit, but they try to stop her. She promises herself with a smile that she will only date and marry the man she loves, and notes that she is very picky about her appearance. She takes her leave, stating that there is nothing to thank him for, and mentally notes that she has cut all ties with Baron Lochry. Somewhere a wounded and bloody man sits with his head down, people looking down on him. A young man with a hook in his hand says that someone is one step late, and he is called Your Highness. Someone notices that someone has been here before them, looking at the corpse of a man with a bloody mouth and hands. They say that this man's name was Lennon, and that he worked in the Ministry of Justice. They explain that 10 years ago Lennon suddenly transferred because he was unable to adapt to his previous department. The young man speculates that Lennon originally worked in the scroll management department, and mentions that department again. Another young man finds a suicide note and says that now everything is clear to him. The suicide note speaks of the inability to pay off huge gambling debts, the decision to commit suicide, and farewell to his mother. The guy advises him not to read this nonsense so as not to degrade himself, to which he reacts with surprise. They wonder how long it would take to play to accumulate such debts, call it idiocy, and are surprised by the cruelty. The young man orders Chase to stay and tell the knights to confiscate all documents and items, and he asks where he is going. The guy in the raincoat turns around and says he's going to work. Chase asks not to leave him alone and cries out in despair after him as he leaves. The girl sits on a bench with a suitcase and thinks that she left home and doesn't know what to do next. She decides that she needs to find a place to live first, looking through the papers. The girl is shocked by the option she found, a famous haunted house for 500,000, and wonders why only such terrible options are available to her. The girl ironically notes that she has come to know life even better and reflects that there is no choice. Perhaps it is worth trying this option. A young man with glasses screams no in panic when he sees something unexpected. He categorically states that there are no free rooms, and the girl is surprised by his greed. The guy is indignant that he doesn't want his house to be mistaken for a real estate agency and can't live with a rival, and the girl finds out what the problem is. The girl asks him if he cares if his rival dies homeless, and the argument between them continues. The girl, in a dramatic pose, says that if she dies, the guy will never defeat her, and turns on the actor mode. The guy mentally imagines that he will always be second, and even in old age he will regret that he did not help her find a home. He suddenly changes his mind, shouting at her to stop and promising to find her a place to live, and the girl easily agrees. The girl thinks that the housing issue is resolved, but she expects a catch, because after that something else usually happens. The young man reflects that he is always one step behind, and the more clues he gets, the more they lead to the same place. The focus is on the scroll management department, and the most suspicious figure of all is identified as Namia Loafi. The girl explains that the killers will not stop because of one failure and will look for new opportunities. And to catch them, surveillance and detention at the right moment are needed. The man is surprised to think that the younger maid speaks too confidently, as if she knows the future and understands that she is clearly connected to everything that is happening around her. He notes that the only clue is the poison, which has a slight sour smell and seems new to him. The man realizes that he has never smelled poison like this before and is surprised by it. The action moves back 15 years, shows the estate of Count Calto in the past. On the lawn, a boy fights with a knight, is defeated, and the knight asks about victory and defeat. The knight says with a satisfied look that he has defeated Kairos again and reproaches him for being tired, calling him Your Highness. The boy, breathing heavily on the grass, is indignant, believing that the knight is acting too harshly. The knight, helping the boy to stand up, mockingly asks if he is really an aristocrat. The boy says he is in a dark phase now, and he is only 10 years old. The knight is surprised and declares that he is the strongest among the knights. The knight laughs, thanks him for the praise, and says that if you eat well and train, you can become like him. Kairos' personal guard, Will, panics and asks Fron what he is doing with His Highness. Will worries that even Fron shouldn't be so rude to the prince, but is assured that everything is fine. Kairos explains that his father also likes Fron, so everything is fine. Will suggests that Fron go and rest in the shade, addressing His Highness. It had been 2 months since Kairos' dark phase began, and during that time he had been living in Count Calto's estate with Fron, who was his personal knight. The narrative notes that, perhaps because Kairos lost his mother early, he takes a particular liking to Fron, which helps keep life in Arbin peaceful. Fron suddenly shows Kairos a caterpillar, which surprises him. Will thinks he's the odd one out, but still notes that it's very warm and cozy here. The frame shows the Great Library of Arbina. Kairos explains that he wants to learn the Southern Sword Manual, and Fron wonders what they are doing in such a boring place. Kairos says that he needs a theory to defeat Fron, and also reminds that it is important to maintain silence in the library, while Fron himself believes that he does not belong among the books. After examining the shelves, Kairos concludes that he has not found anything useful and suggests leaving the library. Fron and Kairos come out and note that real fencing is better than any theory. During training, something suddenly happens and Kairos is called out, calling out His Highness. Fron suddenly grabs Kairos and carries him away, saving him from danger. Fron carries Kairos across the field as broken spears or arrows fly around. Fron is wounded and Kairos calls out his name in alarm. Fron is wounded and bleeding, but he assures Kairos that he is fine and advises him to find a safe place. Suddenly, a creepy goblin with a knife appears, and Kairos does not understand why a goblin appeared in the city. Kairos panics as he tries to stop Fran's bleeding and wonders why this is all happening now. At this time, Will is away on reconnaissance, and the situation becomes increasingly serious. Kairos notices that Fran's wound is unusual. The blood does not stop, and an unfamiliar, unpleasant smell comes from it. Kairos is unable to recognize the smell of poison from Fran's wound and feels helpless. Kairos blames himself for what happened, thinking that if it weren't for his dark phase, Fron wouldn't have suffered. As Kairos ponders this, a flying dragon appears, and he realizes that death may be closer than he thought. A goblin with claws rushes towards them, preparing to attack. Kairos hugs Fron, trying to protect him as poisonous arrows or blades fly around them. The girl activates a defensive spell, creating a magical barrier around Kairos and Fron, which stops the attack. Kairos turns around in amazement and tries to figure out who cast the spell. The girl looks at her hands in surprise and is glad that her magic worked. At this moment, the goblin attacks Kairos and Fron with a scream. The goblin takes a fatal blow and screams in pain as blood gushes from his wound. Will runs in and asks with a worried face if everything is okay with Kairos. Kairos replies that he is fine, but Fron's wound is serious and orders immediate treatment and a return to the estate. Kairos quietly agrees, and Will helps the bleeding Fron stay on his feet on the way back. Kairos says that he is called a carriage, offers to go, and suddenly something attracts his attention, forcing him to look to the side. Kairos meets the eyes of the mage girl and wonders why she is looking at him so intently, and the girl herself is also confused. The girl wonders why Kairos is coming to her, assuming that he wants to thank her, but she notes his seriousness. Kairos approaches the girl and simply tells her, surprising her. Kairos admits that she saved him, promises a reward, and invites her to Count Kalto's estate, considering her appearance to be a commoner. He thinks that as a member of the imperial family, he is obliged to repay for her help and is ready to fulfill any of her wishes, gold or food. The girl says goodbye shyly, and Kairos thinks that he is embarrassed since he has never spoken to people his own age before. She calls out to Kairos, and when he turns away, she grabs his hand to keep him from leaving. The girl exclaims that she cannot just leave her savior like that. She is outraged that he did not say thank you and explains the importance of gratitude for saving him. The girl teaches that you should first say thank you and then talk about the reward. Kairos sheepishly agrees and suggests that this truth is exactly what his parents teach. Kairos thinks that no one has ever spoken to him the way this girl did. He admits that he should have thanked her immediately and, bowing, says thanks for saving him and asks for forgiveness for the excitement. Kairos again promises a reward, asks to come to Count Kalto's estate if he needs anything, and vows to fulfill the request. The girl, with a serious look, asks him to marry her off to a rich man, which greatly surprises Kairos. Kairos is shocked to think that for a child, she is talking about the wedding in a strangely adult manner, although he himself is still a child when he is called to the carriage. The girl advises to marry only for true love, adding with a smile that she was just joking. Kairos mentally calls the girl a fool, and she cheerfully admits that it was a joke. The girl asks Kairos not to tell anyone that she helped him. Night falls and Count Kalto's estate comes into view. The doctor reports that Fron's condition is stable, but a rare type of poison was used. Fron notes that if help had been a little bit late, she would not have been saved. The doctor recommends resting for some time to recover. Fron is upset because even after recovery, he will not be able to use his hand as before. Despite everything, Fron jokes that he can cope even without an arm. The main thing is that His Highness is safe. Will asks not to write off the hand too early. It will be able to work almost like a normal person's. Kairos asks what happened to the goblin. Will is surprised by the question, thinking that Kairos would be depressed about what happened to Fron. They explain that such a monster should not have appeared in the city because all monsters were ordered to be destroyed. Kairos notices from the marks on the goblin's body that he was experimented on. He wonders if the goblin is connected to the criminal group his father destroyed, and the adults confirm that the surviving criminals, who are now wanted, are behind it. A boy with golden hair is pondering something near the stairs. The thought of marrying a very rich man appears close to his eyes. A boy asks an adult who is the richest boy his age in the empire. They tell him that this is Crown Prince Kiaros Polavua. The boy, surrounded by roses and glitter, is surprised that he might have to marry this girl himself. He turns to a girl named Fron and asks what she thinks. Fron wakes up in surprise, screaming as to why he fell asleep. Fron apologizes and explains that he always falls asleep when he hears difficult conversations. The boy ponders how Fron came to be in the Order of Knights, suggesting that skill with a sword alone is not enough, and thinks about blackmail or other reasons. A man with blonde hair suddenly enters the room, and the boy reacts with surprise to his appearance, and then recognizes him as Your Majesty. The man in the waistcoat panics and asks if His Majesty should be in the capital and calls for Fron. The blonde man with the royal armband explains that he shouldn't have sent anyone out of the capital, admitting that he was scared when he heard about the injury. Fron acknowledges His Majesty, who, with a smile, calls the red-haired guy a bear cub. One of the men asks sadly if it is okay to behave like this in front of everyone, and the boy with golden hair greets his father. The royal man thanks Fron for saving his son and says that he will now take care of his recovery. A man and a boy are walking down the hallway, and the boy asks when he is going to propose to Fron. The royal man reacts to the question with surprise, and the boy is surprised that he thought he didn't know. Another guy recalls that one of them sent Fron love letters every day, and even came to her for no reason. The boy accuses Kiaros of staring at Fron when they meet, and says that his mother died long ago. Kiaros covers his face with his hands in embarrassment, and his interlocutor asks why he is embarrassed, since he has already done all this. The man says that when Fron recovers, they will return to the capital together, and it is time to choose a bride, and the boy is surprised by the word bride. The man clarifies that he is not going to force her to marry him just because the boy is the crown prince, and asks if he has taken a liking to any of the young ladies. The blonde suddenly exclaims joyfully that he understood something important. The boy mentally decides that there is no one special yet, so he must behave as usual. The man assumes that he is simply hiding his crush and admits that he knows nothing about the girl. The boy asks Kiaros in surprise how he could fall in love with her, and he replies that she is the one who saved him. The boy explains that he wants to take on more responsibility than just being crown prince. The man agrees with a smile if the girl wishes it and says that it is right. The man says that their kind rarely meets a true mate, but when they do, they become very attached to her. The man puts his hand on the boy's head and advises him not to let go of the one who has captured his heart and to do everything possible. The boy remembers that very girl whom he could not find all this time. Even after several days, that girl still hadn't shown up. At this time, the boy suffered from a severe fever caused by the dark phase. When he finally recovered, he had lost some of his memories, including the girl's face. Despite everything, he did not give up and, with the help of the ravens, tried to find information about her. Several years passed, and the father of the boy who was courting Fron finally proposed to her, and they got married. The following year, they had a boy named Jaden, who became a prince. The boy is persuaded to hold the baby in his arms, but he refuses, and his father jokes about the ginger bear cub. The boy remembers that the girl also used scrolls. He remembers that she was the only one who ever scolded him, and also remembers her words about saying thank you first and then giving a reward. The crows found information about the girl. She uses scrolls and has a talent for magic, often visited the Arbin Library and moved away long ago. The following information concerns Namia Lofri, her background, her achievements in the academy, and her liking for food. The story of a girl who disappeared like a mirage, and Namia Lofri, who appeared around the same time. The boy stands at a table with scattered notes and decides to reveal the true identity of Namia Lofri. Namia Lofri feels a shiver run down her spine as she is informed of a change in her salary bank account. Namia thanks the employee, who looks at her silently. The employee excitedly asks if anything else is needed and immediately retracts his words. Namia, in confusion, tells them to forget everything about the crown prince. She notices that rumors have already spread and that a crowd of curious people is watching her. Namia reflects that half of these people are jealous of her, and the other half are dying of curiosity. Namia decides that it is best to ignore the rumors because any interference will only make the situation worse. She senses that something is wrong and suspects that there are more important rumors in the city than about her. Namia wonders if her intervention changed the original story. She fears that Crown Prince Kiaros may be interested in her and understands that in order to gain his trust, she needs to sort this situation out. Namia thinks that now she doesn't know how the plot will develop. She is irritated by the chaos that is happening and realizes that with her current status, she cannot contact the imperial family. An agitated man appears in the hallway and the two ask what happened. The man panics and reports that Her Majesty the Empress has been arrested. Namia is unexpectedly happy about the news of the Empress's arrest. Then she realizes that she has shown her joy too clearly and thinks that she should be more careful with her facial expression. Namia mentally admits that she interfered with the plot, but thanks fate for allowing it to happen. The Empress's plot to kill the Crown Prince is revealed. An incident is revealed in which the Empress was the customer. Evidence emerges that the Empress purchased poison from an illegal dealer. During a search of her room, they find a lot of poisons, leaving no opportunity to justify herself. In the end, the Empress is convicted and executed, as described in the book. Namia realizes that the real culprit has not yet been found, and the Empress is actually innocent. She reflects on the reason why she waited for this situation. Namia realizes that in order to resolve the situation and gain the Empress's trust, she needs to reveal the truth, and compares this plan to killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The camera pans to the risk management department, signaling the start of a new phase in the investigation. Namia sorts through huge stacks of documents with incredible speed, causing surprise among her colleagues. Namia reports with relief that she finished all the work in just 47 minutes after the start of the workday. Namia thinks with satisfaction that finally all the work is finished and now she can relax. I remember how my father gave money to Baron Loffy when he entrusted his daughter to him, and the question arises as to where Dad could have gotten such funds. It is assumed that the father most likely borrowed money from someone influential, and scenes of threats and coercion flash through the memories. In the worst case, the father could be connected to a criminal organization, which raises concerns and anxiety. The giant wolf's head and the goblin in chains are reminiscent of the events of 15 years ago and the forbidden experiments of criminals on monsters. The main character reflects that if her father is really connected with criminals, it will be difficult for him to count on leniency, and a chance is possible only with the support of the imperial family. But because of the arrogance and principled nature of the imperial family and the dragonkin, it is extremely difficult to win them over. However, there is still hope, because the Empress does not belong to the dragonkin, which means there is still a chance. The heroine enthusiastically decides to get down to business and starts with the team leader. Suddenly, a wave of memories overwhelms her, as if all the scenes from the past were mixed up in her head. She recalls that, based on a report from a staff member of the Scroll Management Department, Empress Fron Polarwood was arrested. She is surprised to realize that this was not a report from a random person, because there are no longer such meticulous people in their department. Someone in the room wonders who this mysterious man is. The heroine is praised for her outstanding abilities, and she is surprised by the coincidence and begins to guess by the voice who is in front of her. Someone asks how the Empress was exposed and explains that it has to do with the succession to the throne. Team leader Osun is greeted with enthusiasm by his colleagues, who note his incredible qualities. Despite his embarrassment, he admits that he loves being the center of attention more than anything else in the world. The heroine is shocked and does not believe that a person can reject any effective methods. An employee asks Namia if it is possible to change the format of the documents, and she strictly replies not to do anything extra, but just do her job. The boss takes credit for all the achievements and orders the name of the report's author to be changed from Namia to his own and sent to the ministry. An example of the incompetence of Chief Osun is shown, who turned out to be the one who reported on the Empress. The heroine understands that if she proves the Empress's innocence, then Osun will find himself on the brink of the abyss. Namiya feels a surge of inspiration and joy with delight. She recalls an incident when she saw the Empress from afar. Remembering that the Empress seemed rude, Namiya notes her honesty and kindness. Namiya muses that such a person would never harm the Crown Prince or risk the throne for something stupid. He comes to the conclusion that the Empress, instead of being stupid, would simply personally carry out a coup and decides not to miss her chance. Namiya makes a plan to make Crown Prince Kiros be indebted to her, as well as to save the Empress and achieve two goals at once. The Empress sits silently in her prison cell under a beam of light, thinking about her situation. The man asks the Empress to tell the whole truth so that he can defend her in court. Justice Minister Arnold Crowley says he believes the Empress, but if she continues to remain silent, he will find himself in a difficult position. The Empress sharply doubts his words, reproaches him for his mistrust, and asks him to be polite. The minister demands that the Empress tell him the truth if she is truly innocent. The man makes an accusation. Why did she keep so much poison, showing a tiny container? The minister excitedly replies that he cannot tell the whole truth. The Empress is shown to be in a very bad situation. She secretly left the palace and met with a black market merchant, and the poison found on her matches the poison used to poison the Crown Prince. The man warns the Empress that her silence will lead to terrible consequences. The Empress indignantly denies the accusation of attempting to kill the Crown Prince, saying that she would never do such a thing. The minister regretfully wonders why the Empress is so stubborn and unwilling to cooperate. He announces that he is leaving, but warns that there is little time left to make a decision. The Empress cries out in despair that she has made a mistake, outraged by the absurd accusations of trying to kill the Crown Prince. She remembers that he is only 8 years old and scolds herself for her unsuccessful attempts to think. The Empress admits that she simply wanted to help His Majesty. She begins to wonder if the Emperor's health has worsened because of the poison, and this thought makes her collect poisons like crazy. The Empress decides that the best thing she could do was to collect all the poisons and show them to the Emperor upon his return. She hoped that she could help Edwin at least a little. Instead, her actions have tarnished the reputation of the entire imperial family, and now they are accused of plotting to assassinate the Crown Prince, with the Emperor in critical condition. The Empress clenches her fists, realizing that all she can do is remain silent and accept death for the sake of responsibility for this chaos. An unexpected visitor in a cloak asks the Empress if she really intends to surrender, and she cautiously inquires who he is. The guest introduces herself as Nanya Lofi from the Scroll Management Department and says that time is short, so she gets straight to the point. Namiya confidently states that she knows how to win the case. The Empress coldly refuses to trust Nanya and questions why she should be trusted at all. Namiya notes to herself that she is impressed by the strength of the Empress, who was previously called the strongest knight. The Empress is cautiously wondering who this girl Nanya Loafi is and how she sees the situation. The Empress recalls that usually people are frightened by her gaze, but Nanya remained absolutely calm. The Empress mentally acknowledges that this girl is indeed strong. Despite her outward bravery, Namiya herself is deeply afraid inside, trembling like an aspen leaf. Namiya compares the pressure emanating from the Empress to a predator watching its prey, particularly highlighting her intimidating face. Namiya mentally decides that she cannot back down and reminds the Empress out loud that she recently doubted her trust, and now she is ready to prove her knowledge of the Emperor's illness. The Empress rushes to the bars in a rage and screams, asking how Namiya knew all this. Namiya calmly says that this is not all she can do to help, and warns that without her help the court will force the Empress to admit her guilt. But she is on the verge, squeezing her hand, asking to stop and refusing to say anything. The Empress thinks that if she speaks out, she will undermine the authority of the imperial family, so her best option is to remain silent and die. She thinks bitterly that who would accept the Empress, who was once a knight? Memories show that even ministers avoid looking her in the eye. The Empress remembers her son Jaden. Jaden hangs his head, ashamed for his mother. The Empress is convinced that it would be better for Jaden if she disappeared. Namia clenches her fist in indignation, not accepting such a sacrifice for her son and considering such thoughts to be irresponsible nonsense. She indignantly declares that death proves nothing and asks whether an 8-year-old prince will really understand his mother's sacrifice and be grateful for it. Namia urges the Empress to consider the feelings of Jaden, whom she will abandon, and advises her to have the courage to face the problem head-on instead of running away. The Empress admits that Namia is right, and she is glad that she was finally heard, urging her to stop being stubborn. Namia suddenly realizes that she has been too preoccupied with thoughts about her father and scolds herself for being distracted by other people's family problems instead of convincing the Empress. Suddenly, guards approach the cell, and Namia realizes that the guards are already here. Namia introduces herself to the security guard as an employee of the Scroll Management Department, and he is surprised by her visit. She explains that she came on orders from Crown Prince Kiros to check the scrolls, much to the guard's surprise. The guard doubts whether the prince could really give such an order, and Namia confirms that he is capable of it. The Empress announces to the guard that she has a stomachache in order to get to the doctors. Namia suggests that the Empress might be uncomfortable talking about this in front of her guards, and advises that she pretend to be ill rather than remain close to the prince. The Empress begins to moan loudly and scream that her stomach hurts badly, confusing the guards. One of the guards wonders why Namia also suddenly falls to the floor. The guards panic and ask for help for the Empress, and Namia convinces them to bring a doctor as quickly as possible. Namia, feigning weakness, says that her legs are giving way and she cannot get up. The guard states that he cannot leave his post, but remembers that he is legally obligated to protect members of the imperial family, even if the Empress is in prison. He realizes that if their doubts cause the Empress to have health problems, it will be their responsibility. Namia sternly adds that in the worst case, this will be considered the murder of a member of the imperial family, and the consequences will affect the guard's entire family. The frightened guard agrees and rushes after the doctor. The Empress is amazed that everything worked and looks at Namia with joy. She jokes that Namia has a sharp tongue and real acting skills, acknowledging the success of their improvisation. The Empress jokingly asks if Namia just made up this law, and Namia assures that it really does exist. The Empress smiles and admits that she likes Namia. The Empress and Namia shake hands, and the Empress says that she feels trusted in her and is ready to follow her plan. Several days pass, and the long-awaited day of trial arrives. By morning, someone remembers with alarm that Her Majesty's trial will begin in the morning. The Crown Prince is confident in the Empress's innocence and thinks that she was simply drawn into something bad. The Crown Prince remembers how, since childhood, she always protected him and was a simple, straightforward person who did not know how to lie. At the same time, he desperately realizes that he can do nothing to save her. Even an attempt to meet her failed due to the seriousness of the accusations. The Minister of Justice was unable to help in any way, and the Empress remained silent the entire time, so the Crown Prince was left with only one thing to do: send an urgent message to the Emperor with the news that the trial was about to begin. The Crown Prince sits at the table and despairingly admits his powerlessness. A servant comes in and announces that the Empress's trial is about to begin. The Crown Prince, gathering his strength, replies that he understands and prepares to go. He thinks that despite their estrangement, the Empress is still an important person for him. The Crown Prince firmly declares that he will not allow the Empress to die because of a ridiculous and false accusation. Entering the courtroom, he is surprised to see how many people have gathered, and notes to himself that such a trial will always be interesting for aristocrats. However, he hopes to evoke sympathy from people and change the course of events. The Empress stands at the barrier and reflects that her appearance is unlikely to arouse pity in the public. She tells herself to forget about it, because her face, on the contrary, only attracts opponents, and nervously notes that this is the first time in such a situation. The Crown Prince is suspicious that the Empress may have some kind of ace up her sleeve, otherwise she won't be able to survive. The girl with white hair sits, thoughtfully thinking about how to win this trial with dignity. Surrounded by two young men, the girl hears one of them remark in surprise that the rumors turned out to be true. She is shocked to hear that there is a rumor that the crown prince likes a girl who looks like a dried-up bean sprout, and realizes that it is about her. The girl mentally notes that there is no romance in the prince's burning eyes, but only suspicion. She hears rumors of an engagement being discussed behind her back and wonders where it came from. The girl finds out that the reason for the rumors is a colleague named Deborah, who only smiled carelessly when asked about the relationship. She tries to shy away from the topic, wondering how she could possibly think of romance when she saw that expression on his face. Two men are discussing a girl's upcoming wedding, causing her to clutch her head. The girl reflects that there is nothing good in such a relationship with the crown prince, although she has no choice. Surrounded by her friends, she wearily thinks that because of all this talk about marriage, in reality, there will be no wedding. Kairos reflects on the bravery of the Scroll Management Department team leader who will be testifying. He looks at the man suspiciously, wondering what he is up to. One of the men comments with delight that the crown prince is looking at Lady Namiya with such passion, while Kairos is displeased with his reaction. The man says that there are a lot of weddings in the city now, and reservations are booked up a year in advance, which surprises Kairos. Kairos is surprised to realize that if Namiya really is the girl from his childhood, then the wedding will happen anyway. A happy wedding scene between Kairos and Namiya is shown, where he wonders if they should reserve a place now. Kairos finds the idea of reserving a place quite rational. The assistant enthusiastically promises to organize everything and reserve a place for the wedding. The court hearing begins in a huge, bright hall. Judge Arnold Crowley calls for everyone to rise, announcing the start of trial. A girl testifies at a trial about a plot to assassinate Crown Prince Kairos Polarwood. The accused turns out to be the Empress of Fron Polarwood, who is led out in handcuffs. The witness is called to come behind the stand and introduce himself. He identifies himself as Osun, head of the Scroll Management Bureau Department. The witness is asked to describe the incident and begins by saying that he first heard about it at dinner. Osun says that the shop owner then told him something unusual. A witness recounts that he heard that the Empress bought poison at the black market across the street. Osun admits that at first he did not believe this story, but one day he witnessed a suspicious meeting. He is worried that his accusation will be considered slander against the imperial family. However, continuing his testimony, he states that as a servant of the crown he cannot allow fear to outweigh duty. Kairos comments that such a public appearance will come back to haunt Osun when the truth comes out, and his companion is surprised by such directness. A witness states that the Empress has purchased poison that is fatal to members of the imperial family and considers it an attempted murder, but the judge cuts off his personal comments. The judge asks the Empress whether she confirms the charges, and she answers in the negative. The Empress is asked to use formal speech and, surprised, she agrees. One of the spectators in the hall remarks that if things continue in this spirit, the Empress will definitely lose the trial, and the judge is interested in the purpose of acquiring the poison. The Empress begins to get confused in her explanations and often looks back, arousing suspicion among those present. In response to the question, the Empress replies that it was just a special operation. The judge clarifies against whom exactly this special operation was directed. The Empress replies that of course she is against Osun, which shocks him. Osun is indignant and declares that he is not lying and has indeed seen the Empress many times, despite her claims that she only went out on weekdays. The Empress asks doubtfully what the civil servant was doing there during working hours. Osun indignantly replies that his working hours have nothing to do with absenteeism and that he did not skip work. The Empress asks how Osun's investigation is justified even if his words are true, and an argument about the articles of the Charter begins. The judge reminds that members of the imperial family have the authority to supervise civil servants. The judge clarifies that, according to the law, with the permission of a member of the imperial family, a knight has the right to conduct an investigation into a suspicious person. The Empress, recalling the law, declares that she remains a knight of the empire and has the right to conduct an investigation according to the law. Kyaros is amazed to think that the Empress actually remembered all these laws. The atmosphere in the courtroom changes, and the audience no longer ridicules the Empress, but begins to whisper respectfully. Viewers begin to doubt Osun's testimony and discuss whether he could have simply gone to a bar during the workday. The Empress's supporters are becoming confident that perhaps the trial will proceed in a way that suits them, but the Empress herself is outraged that she has to defend herself against an ordinary employee. When asked about his intuition, Osun begins to justify himself by saying that he has an excellent sense of smell and that his guess was formed due to a random coincidence of circumstances. The sound of a gavel hitting the podium is heard. The judge calls for silence and order after the emotional remarks of the participants. The courtroom announces a recess. The hearing will resume in an hour, and everyone begins to disperse down the hallway. Kyaros reflects that he was sure of the Empress's quick guilt, but now doubts the outcome and suspects that Namiya did something. He wonders why Namiya is helping the Empress and asks himself this question. He speculates that perhaps her motive is fame, but suspects that the reason may be even more interesting, and the Empress asks the guards to let her go to the toilet. Namiya is mentally glad that she handed over an important scroll to the Empress at the right moment. In the cell, the Empress despairs that she cannot cope with the large amount of information. Namiya advises her to remember as much as she can. When the Empress admits that she cannot remember everything, Namiya hands her a scroll with special properties. Namiya explains that this scroll allows one to use telepathy to communicate mentally freely over a short distance. She temporarily declares herself the Empress's lawyer and promises to defend her in court. Namiya convinces the Empress that if they buy time, there will definitely be a chance, and explains that Her Majesty has a family to rely on, so the main thing now is to hold on. The girl is glad that the telepathy scroll worked, but regrets that due to the rush, she has to move her lips to transmit thoughts. She notices that so far no one around has paid attention to their secret communication. Suddenly, someone grabs Namiya's hand, and she is surprised by such a gesture. Namiya turns around in shock and tries to figure out who is holding her back. A man with an unpleasant expression appears in front of her, saying that he had been looking for her for a long time. Namiya is outraged by the stranger's rudeness and demands to know how he ended up there and why he is grabbing her hand. And the man asks if she knows her name and admits that Baron Loafi asked him to arrange this marriage. She mentally notes that he doesn't even listen to her, and the man, with a dreamy smile, admits that he fell in love with her at first sight. He begins to shower her with dubious compliments, talking about her youthful face and how she will become even more beautiful after the wedding. Namiya firmly remembers that she clearly expressed her refusal and asks if her father passed on this message, to which the man remarks that if she refuses, Baron Loafi's family will go bankrupt. The girl calmly tells the man with a smile that she has broken off all relations with her ex-fiancé and asks him to let her go. The man boasts that he is now not just a rich merchant, but has bought himself the title of Baron and become an aristocrat. He persistently asks her what she thinks about his candidacy and does not let go of her hand. Namiya agrees outwardly calmly, but mentally sneers that he's worth it if she gets sick from breakfast. The man suddenly changes his expression to angry, feeling growing irritation. In her mind, Namiya calls him a penniless poor man who only borrows money from everyone after buying the title, while he squeezes her hand even tighter. Namiya painfully reminds him that she has no intention of getting married, but her words are ignored. The man angrily shouts that she still doesn't understand and swings at her. Someone's hand quickly stops the man and prevents him from hitting Namiya. Namiya looks up in surprise, and the unknown rescuer asks excitedly if she is injured. Kiwon intervenes in what is happening, reproaching the man for being overly dramatic and making a scene in public. The man angrily demands that Kiwon not interfere in other people's affairs, and Kiwon calmly asks what the whole thing is about. Kiwon introduces himself as Namiya's former subordinate, causing confusion among his interlocutors. The angry man calls Kiwon a nobody and demands that he be let go, marveling at the young man's strength. Kiwon reasons that it is natural for even a former subordinate to keep an eye on a leader, especially when the latter is cruel to a woman and twists a man's arm. Kiwon threatens the man to disappear unless he wants his arms broken. After the skirmish ends, Kiwon asks Namia if everything is okay with her. An awkward silence falls between Namia and Kiwon after what happened. Kiwon mentally admits that he didn't really want to get involved in this situation. He notices from her appearance that Namia was clearly in trouble, despite her outward calm. The silver-haired girl addresses Mr. Kiwon. She is surprised that the guy ran away and ended up here and not in his home country. The girl understands that the guy doesn't speak their language well because he speaks with mistakes and is considered a foreigner. She speculates that the guy must have been memorizing entire phrases, which is why he has a limited vocabulary, and the guy looks upset. The girl thanks him for his help, thinks she could have helped more, and promises to treat him better. The guy is inwardly glad that everything has been resolved, but notices her strange look and says that there is nothing to be thankful for. The guy asks Miss Namia if she is going to get married. She is surprised by the question. The girl recalls that the guy overheard her talking about not getting married. She replies that she is not against marriage itself, since she has already been asked, and the guy, surprised, asks why. The girl explains that the family forced the groom on her because of money, and the guy remains thoughtfully silent. The girl is surprised by the question about her opinion about the wedding with the crown prince and asks why they are asking about Prince Kairos. The guy explains that in his home country, it is customary to talk about a hypothetical marriage with members of the ruling family, and the girl is perplexed by such a tradition. The girl thoughtfully begins to answer, "What if we are talking about Prince Kairos?" She admits that if it were possible, she would marry him. The girl mentally notes that even though she said this, marrying a prince is a fairy tale, and that she will never marry the crown prince. The girl notices that the trial's about to start again. The guy says he has to go. The girl thanks him with a smile for the help he gave her. The guy looks at the girl with surprise and embarrassment. The guy, sitting down near a bench among the flowers, reflects that such feelings are not at all typical of him. The girl says gloomily that it's just disgusting. She is at a loss to think what Howard Alton is doing here. The girl suspects that Howard Alton could have been sent to Loafi because they do not give up after one defeat, and he is no different from them. Kiwon appears and intervenes in the situation, commenting on the drama of what is happening, and the girl turns to him in surprise. The girl decides that if it weren't for Kiwon, everything would have ended very badly. In the spacious hall, someone calls out to Namia, and she responds in surprise. Team leader Osen calls the girl to come to him urgently. A girl comes out into the street to meet a man and asks what he needs, and he is outraged by her rudeness. The man says that he has always cared for Namia, and she listens in surprise. He recalls how he once believed in her abilities and gave her a chance, but the girl herself calls it an abuse of power because he forced her to work for him. The team leader asks Namia to make a teleportation scroll for him with a smile, and she thinks that something is wrong with it. The man explains that it's only for a short time, just to get outside the Imperial Palace, and Namia advises him to walk, as it will be more useful. It shows that making a teleportation scroll is not difficult, but it has too small a radius, so it is ineffective. A male voice irritably demands silence, interrupting the previous explanations. The man shouts that he knows everything himself and demands that they simply make a scroll. He justifies himself by saying that he is not asking for anything complicated. He just needs to get out of the palace, and Namia is surprised by his intentions. She guesses that he wants to escape during the trial, although he is only a witness, and the man again urges her to fulfill the request, threatening her position. Namia calmly explains that it's not that she doesn't want to, but that she simply can't do it. The girl agrees that without connections and skills, it is difficult for her to behave like an important person, and she is used to putting up with a lot. Namia says that of course she was once able to make more than 160 scrolls, and even save the crown prince, but it almost led to her punishment, so she can't repeat it again. The man sarcastically apologizes to Namia and asks if she is happy now. The The guy says, confused, that he doesn't understand what you're talking about and then tries to turn to Namiya. Namiya calmly tells the man that she cannot help him because the trial's about to start and she has to go. The man angrily shouts where she is going. The blonde hopes he's not late. The blonde, having changed his appearance again, hurries forward. Someone calls out to Namiya sharply, asking if she's finished chatting, and the blonde listens in, recognizing the voice. Namiya loudly complains that the team leader is making unreasonable demands. The man raises his hand and yells at Namiya for daring to contradict him. Namiya is scared and thinks that he is going to hit her now and wonders how many more times this will happen. She is surprised that they won't beat her because she was ready for the blow. She feels her back burning instead of her cheek because Kairos appeared from behind with a terrifying aura, and the man begins to make excuses. The prince turns to Miss Lofi and checks to see if she is injured. Kairos offers to escort Namiya to the courtroom and she thanks him for his help. The purple-haired man is mentally told to stop making a scene and just come to court, and he looks upset. Namiya bows and thanks the prince again for his help, and he thoughtfully asks why she is always so careless. The girl looks away and wonders why he provokes her and why she constantly gets into trouble. Kairos wonders intensely why he is communicating with worthless people at all, and in his mind he reasons that he is angry with Namiya Loafi and does not understand why his heart is uneasy. The prince directly tells Nami that she should value herself more. He reminds her that the trial is about to start and asks her to return to her seat, and Namiya wonders why he is picking on her, feeling his lectures as parental. Namiya decides that now is not the time to think because the trial's about to start and she needs to hurry. After all the difficulties, the trial resumes and continues according to the previous scenario. The Empress continues to pressure Osun with suspicions and accusations. The team leader defends himself and insists that the accusations are unfair, although he is very worried. The strategy of behavior is described: first you need to convince the audience with logical arguments, then drag out time with suspicions. Namiya is surprised that the Empress is acting suspiciously while collecting poisons and advises the next step to involve the Emperor in the matter. The Empress screams and declares that she acted on the orders of His Majesty. The judge clarifies what he is talking about, and the Empress continues to justify herself by saying that the collection of poisons and the investigation were ordered by the Emperor. The judge declares that such irresponsible statements are unacceptable, and the team leader objects. If this were a real order, the Emperor would have come in person. In the courtroom they are discussing, indeed, the Emperor is now in the West at a summit, but perhaps he will appear soon, and someone thinks that such recklessness could be a mistake. Namiya clenches her fists and decides that she needs to buy as much time as possible. The Empress indignantly shouts that she is not lying and accuses the team leader of suspicious behavior. The judge makes a remark to the Empress about her behavior and manners. The Crown Prince says he also wants to testify. The prince begins his testimony regarding the actions of Empress Fron Polavu. A man with white hair bursts into the courtroom and calls out to Kairos, asking him to stop the trial. Kairos officially confirms that everything really happened on the orders of His Majesty. A man with white hair entering the hall is surprised by what is happening. He asks why the imperial court is taking place without the Emperor. The team leader is stunned and asks if it was really he who testified against the Empress. Namiya thinks intensely that Osun is so incompetent that he couldn't have organized such a conspiracy on his own. She comes to the conclusion that there is someone else behind everything, a person or organization that has conspired against the imperial family. Osun stutters in panic and nervously thinks about what to say. With the appearance of the Emperor, Osun becomes even more afraid, because now everyone will think that the Empress was telling the truth and will want to catch him. Rumors about the Emperor's presence in the West raise doubts among those present, and they wonder if it was a trap. Namiya guesses that the Emperor was actually secretly rebuilding his forces in the West. I remember that according to the book, the Emperor has a secret ability, teleportation. Thanks to this ability, the Emperor could instantly arrive at the palace from afar. Now, if Osun begins to suspect that he was used to frame the emperor's family, the outcome of the trial may change, and in the meantime, the empress asks if she is injured. Osun falls to his knees in court and exclaims that he is ready to tell everything. Everyone understands that now he will easily confess to everything. Namiya thinks she doesn't know why she was helped, but it bought her time. She mentally thanks the crown prince for his excellent help, and he is surprised, not understanding the gesture. Osun is being maliciously pressured to confess, and he does so under the pressure of fear. Osun exclaims to the public that he is innocent, but admits that he did everything on orders because he was threatened with death. He is asked who exactly made the threat, and Osun agrees to reveal the name, saying that he is about to tell everything. Just when Osun is about to name the customer, he is surprised to find a knife in his back. Panic begins among the people, and someone shouts that a man was killed with a knife. The white-haired hero realizes that there was an accomplice in the room and admits that Osun is already dead. There is a noise in the hall, everyone is in a panic, and Namiya is trying to squeeze through the crowd. She calls for calm and, stunned, begins to guess that all this is happening for something greater. An unknown man stands in front of the crowd, raises his hand with a vial, and loudly shouts the word evolution. He drinks the contents of the bottle in front of everyone, after which he screams and terrifies Namiya. The contents take effect immediately, and the man falls to the floor, while Namiya and those around him look at the body in shock. Another character states that this man is dead. Namiya realizes that all of this was done to keep Osun quiet, and mistakenly thought that he was trying to escape out of fear of the emperor. The memories return to Osun's request to make a teleportation scroll in order to escape. She realizes that he wanted to escape from those who would kill him after his confession, and not from the trial. Osun and that man were nothing more than pawns in someone else's game, sacrificed for someone else's plans. Namiya looks at the man's body and internally agrees that they are discarded pawns in someone's game. The girl asks herself in despair if a person's life is really just a joke for someone, and another character says that the trial needs to be completed first. Security announces that from now on, no one is allowed to leave the hall. Everyone is ordered to block all exits from the court building. Viewers are required to cooperate with the investigation. It is reported. A man publicly announces the adjournment of a court hearing, closing the session. The trial ends in chaos, and the empress is then acquitted due to insufficient evidence and the death of a witness. All those present at the trial are thoroughly searched. Namiya notices that the line to be searched is moving incredibly slowly, and wonders why there is only one person doing it. The soldier calls Miss Namiya Lawafi and tells her that she is asked to go to the empress. Namiya meets the empress at the award ceremony and notes that she expected something like this. Empress Fron Polarwood enjoys food with pleasure, believing that food tastes better after hard work. Emperor Edwin Polarwood warns of choking hazards and advises eating more slowly. Crown Prince Kairos Polarwood thinks there is no need to worry, as the Empress's stomach is very resilient. The Empress jokes that she was worried about the fragile Namiya, who suffered so much in prison, and Namiya awkwardly refuses the treat. Namiya internally advises not to believe the words of the Empress, who theatrically asks for more and eat merrily. A majestic building appears, a magical bathhouse. In the magic tower, several magicians are busy working at a table, surrounded by books and potions. The door to the laboratory swings open, and the head of the tower enters the room, greeting the students. The students joyfully greet the head of the tower, are indignant at the accumulated work, and immediately ask to check their work. A mage with long white hair notices that he has been gone for ages and has hundreds of pages of magical reports to check. The tower leader turns away tiredly and says that he will check everything later, despite the students' request to stay. The younger mage asks if the journey was successful, and the tower leader reluctantly confirms. The magician says that everyone is very happy about the return of the leader, but he considers this to be empty words. The magician reproaches the head of the tower for leaving again for months to look for his runaway daughter, and the head himself assures that raising children is difficult, but his failure is not a reason for another fall. The head of the tower seriously says that this magician should not have children. The mage suggests focusing on work in the tower after 25 years of searching, and the leader jokes that such a child would be worth having because even demons would run away. The head of the tower notices that there is a pile of letters on the table and receives a request to familiarize himself with all the documents. After reading the letter, the chief is surprised that it is from the crown prince and grumbles that he asked not to be drawn into worldly affairs. The assistant notices that after the tower chief left, everything was left unattended, and jokingly asks if the official can make 172 scrolls in one night. The young mage reveals that his name is Laurent, not Rollin, and is slightly indignant. The boss is surprised that such a talent ends up being a low-ranking employee, and the assistant happily confirms that this is the case. An old man with long white hair decides that talent cannot be allowed to go to waste in the palace. 3 girls and 2 men gathered in a luxurious hall, discussing the upcoming conversation with Miss Namia. The guy apologizes for the awkwardness of the meeting, and the girl answers him shyly. One of the girls offers Namia a piece of food to try, and she is surprised at her fate. Namia peeks into the room and apologizes, and the other girl happily says that she came on time. The girl is cheerfully seated at a table with food, and she is surprised by what is happening. The owner thanks Namia for her hard work and explains that she has prepared a treat for her. Namia is treated to food and happily thanks them for it. She begins to eat, but is interrupted by the unexpected appearance of men, and she becomes upset that she did not have time to eat. The guy assesses the situation, looking at Namia, and seems to start a serious conversation. The young man with golden hair thanks for help not only in court, but also in other cases. The fair-haired man with a kind smile says that if you need anything, you just need to say. Namia is amazed and hears that she more than deserves this award. The red-haired girl happily declares that she also wants to reward Namia. Namia, with a serious face, decides that now that the entire imperial family is here, she has a chance. At the table, a girl with a warm smile asks if the others would mind listening to her story. The girl tells a story that she kept to herself for a long time. Namia mentions living under debt and going through hard times. She shares her memories of becoming the adopted daughter of Baron Lotry. Namia admits that if she finds her father, even if he is connected to criminals, she asks to spare him, causing a violent reaction from those around her. The girl with red hair, moved to tears, promises to forgive and even help find her father. The man angrily clenches his fist and says that Lotry needs to be dealt with first. The same woman energetically adds that it is necessary to deal with the mother as well, surprising Namia. She hugs Namia tightly and is outraged that her mother dumped her debts on the girl and ran away. The woman declares that she will teach her wisdom, and Namia is surprised that they are standing up for her. The woman persistently asks him to tell her about his mother, and the young man considers this rude. The woman apologizes to Namia for her words, and Namia calmly says that she was not thinking about her mother. The young man admits that he remembers almost nothing about her. He only learned everything about his father. The man recalls that his mother was, in a sense, innocent. Namia says that she thought the life of an aristocrat was easy, and that's why she proposed to her. Namia says with surprise that her mother was not innocent, but rather petty. Namia's father reminds him that he is the second son of a baron who did not inherit the title. Her father notes that her mother had a special charm of naivety, but Namia doubts whether this is a good thing. Namia holds her father's hand and explains that her mother abandoned them. The father smiles and says that he still doesn't think she's a bad person. The young man states that he understands Namia's situation and promises to give his father immunity if he is not involved in crime. He also adds that the imperial family will help find Namia's father, which surprises the girl. Namia is happy in her mind that they did even more for her than she asked for. Someone stops the man as he leaves to say something else. The guy turns to Namia and says that he has a personal question for her. Namia wonders with concern why he needs anything from her. She is at a loss to know if this is really the case. It shows how the Oson department is almost destroyed, and the accusation against the imperial family is the cause. Namia wonders if the goal is to control the scroll department. A young man asks Namia about her past in the southern province. Namia imagined how she might end up living in the sticks if she lost everything. She admits her guilt and begs not to close the scroll management department, and also hears a question about the library. The man seriously asks if she really went to the library often, and Namia is surprised by his intentions. Namia confirms that she often went to the library because her father worked a lot. The girl replies that she may have studied the scrolls and even made them for herself, but she does not understand why her interlocutor needs this. Namia asks in surprise if she ever saved a boy with protective scrolls. She remembers that she actually saved a boy who was attacked by a goblin. It dawns on her that the boy was the crown prince. The young man asks why Namia didn't come to Count Kalto's estate then. The woman is stunned to learn that Namia was the very girl who saved her. She is surprised that Namia hasn't changed at all since then, but admits that her memories are a bit blurry. The woman happily rushes to Namia and thanks her for saving her life, despite the girl's surprise. It becomes clear to the others that the once wounded knight is the current empress. The empress recognizes one of those present as the same pumped-up knight and asks if he remembers her. The empress addresses Fron with drama, claiming that she is his destiny, and he responds by expressing outrage at her cruelty. The dark-haired woman looks into the eyes of the embarrassed blonde man and reminds him that they are already married. The white-haired girl apologizes to the blonde, admitting that she didn't take his feelings into account, and he agrees with slight confusion. The two stand to the side, watching the couple, while the other woman says that she understands His Majesty's concern, but the blonde guy tells the white-haired girl that technically she was the one saving him, and wonders why there's any point in discussing it. The blonde man thinks to himself with a tense expression about how he had to play along because of Fron's emotion, and now he can't get a word in edgewise. The dark-haired woman suddenly remembers something and finds a solution. The white-haired girl explains that the crown prince searched for his savior with the help of crows for 10 years. The blonde man near the door says that it's just in case, and in response he hears a question about what kind of case, and he himself admits that his gratitude is no less. The white-haired girl is surprised by the blonde's good mood and thinks that perhaps he will reward her too, and he begins a sentence. The blonde guy looks at the white-haired girl and says that he would like to thank her. The blonde man sheepishly admits that he is indeed glad to finally meet Miss Namia after so many years. The white-haired girl thanks him for saving her life twice and is surprised by the expression on his face. The girl wonders in her mind if he is really not going to confess, and the blonde says that the real reason why he was looking for her will now be announced. The blonde, confused, claims that this can't be but still tries to name the reason. The girl smiles with relief when the blonde man says that he wanted to use the crows to find her missing father. She asks again if it is really her real father and not her adoptive father, and the blonde confirms. An image of a man with silver hair appears and someone says that it is Cedric Lofi. The girl admits that she felt that he was looking for his biological father and is amazed by this. She is amazed to think that she can actually find him. The girl is going to thank the blonde and says that she is very grateful to him. The white-haired girl says Prince Kairos' name with a warm smile. She covers her face with her hand in embarrassment, and the prince tells her that there is no need to thank him. The prince, blushing, leaves, and his friend calls out to him by the name of Kairos. The friend says in surprise to your majesty, and Kairos himself gestures for silence. The friend says this is all very sweet, but asks if Kairos is going to say what he really wanted to say. The friend encourages the prince, reminding him that he is the crown prince and there is no need to doubt. The prince turns sharply to the girl and says forward, and she reacts in surprise. In a spacious hall, the prince confesses to the girl that he really wanted to ask her a question. At this moment, someone calls out loudly to them and demands that they give way. They try to bar the couple from entering, but the girl is outraged by the ban, and the prince notes that it is too noisy outside. A man with long grey hair bursts into the room and loudly calls out to Namia Loafi, demanding that his words not be ignored. He orders them to go with him to the magic tower, causing surprise in Namia and the prince standing nearby. Namia tries to explain that she really is Namia Loafi. but she can't finish. The man suddenly approaches Namiya and shouts out in surprise, "You!" A shadowy figure appears and Namiya, frightened, asks why they are looking at her like that, assuming it is Dad. The man says nothing happened, and Namiya wonders who he is. The prince whispers to Nami that the man's name is Dramer, and that he is the head of the magic tower, and she is shocked by this news. Dramer, raising his staff, asks permission to ask Namiya a question, and she looks at him in surprise. Shown a stack of scrolls and a quill, Dramer asks if Namiya really created 172 scrolls overnight and activated them the next day. Dramer enthusiastically asks her to continue, and Namiya is amazed that he is not going to listen to her objections. Namiya mentally notes that Dramer has a harsh and stern aura about him as he addresses her. Dramer asks if it's true that she's from the academy and is surprised by her low ranking. He approves of her answers and is excited to continue. Dramer grabs Namiya and claims to be taking her to the magic tower. He speculates that Namiya had talent, but her family did not encourage it, or her grades were used to boost the prestige of others. Namiya asks to be put down, and Dramer explains that they usually don't accept people her age, but she is a genius, and he can't let such talent go to waste. Dramer asks how old she is, and allows her to stay in the tower until she is 40, adding that there is no need to pay rent, and Namiya realizes in her mind that she will not be able to look for her father. Kiaros holds Namiya carefully in his arms and notes that she said no. Namiya asks the Crown Prince in surprise what he is doing. Kiaros says that Miss Namiya is a government employee and is under the Empire's protection, and Namiya admits that even she is embarrassed by the situation. Drummer indignantly declares that geniuses should be where they belong. He abruptly agrees that Namiya should remain a civil servant, much to the surprise of those around him. The dark-haired woman starts an argument with Drummer, and they clash their weapons in a tense scene. The woman indignantly claims that magicians are much better and asks if anyone knows how much government employees are paid. The woman and Dramer continue their argument, each insisting that his profession is better, and the onlookers ask them to stop. One of the men notices that Her Majesty seems to be enjoying the squabble after a hard day. Another man concludes that it is indeed difficult to stop the disputants, even though they are equal. The heroine's friend teases the prince with a smile, saying that he seems to like what is happening, and the prince suddenly becomes embarrassed. Namiya carefully points out to the prince that he may have misunderstood everything and agrees. After the misunderstanding, the heroes thank each other, and the prince wonders why no one clarified what exactly the misunderstanding was, and did not wait for the end of the sentence. Dramer suggests sitting down and having a calm conversation, and Namiya notes that people usually sit down to negotiate before they start a fight. At the round table, everyone sits down and expresses their opinions. Dramer is the first to declare that Namiya should go with him to the tower. Kiaros and Namiya sheepishly note that Dramer always said the same thing. Fron indignantly accuses Dramer that his department staged an assassination attempt on the prince, and now she is defending the criminal and demands an explanation. Dramer angrily orders the entire department to be closed, causing Namiya to be shocked, and the head announces that the Magic Scrolls department is indeed in question. The prince clarifies that he is talking about the Scroll Management Department. The head agrees and adds that the Scroll Management Department has been greatly reduced and is no longer as important. Perhaps the tower head is right. Kairos strongly objects that the Scroll Management Department cannot be gotten rid of, since it owes its life to Miss Namiya. Fron agrees that Namiya's merits in saving the Crown Prince are undeniable, and this assessment is completely fair. Drummer calls the prince a fool and warns that if he acts softly, the conspirators will strike again, and asks if they have come to protect the department. Drummer admits that on paper the department is indeed part of the tower, but in reality they simply lack talented people. Kiaros objects that Namiya Loafi cannot be taken away from their group. Drummer irritably calls Kiaros a stubborn little bastard and an impudent little thing. Someone notes that there is complete chaos in the department and is concerned that in such a low position, Namiya is only burying her talent. Drummer sharply agrees with the previous remark and decisively raises his hand. He announces that he has found a solution that will satisfy everyone. Dramer points to the surprised Namia and tells her to become minister. Silhouettes of officials appear in the background, and it is discussed that receiving the position of minister at such a young age is an enormous rarity. Dramer reminds them that the department has lost its minister and its leader, and asks if they need a new minister. He says in a satisfied tone that she will simply be appointed to this position. Dramer explains that he has heard of Namia's competence and talent in magic, and claims that if she becomes a minister, the tower will be able to fulfill its duties to the imperial family well. Kiaros adds that the imperial family will avoid criticism for disbanding the department if Namia is promoted. He agrees with the arguments that if Namia becomes minister, the department will work as it should. Fron happily reasons that the minister must have a lot of free time, so that she can always be called, and both sides approve of this decision. Namia is shocked that she is going to be appointed as a minister without any verification. She doubts whether this is really possible, and Dramer is pleased to note that everyone has finally come to an agreement. The head of the procedure says that you need to find out the opinions of other people, and not decide only among yourselves. Justice Minister Arnold Crowley joins the meeting. Arnold clarifies whether he was really called to express his opinion. Arnold notes reservedly that they plan to appoint Namia as minister, but that is not a position that can be filled by just anyone. Namia notes that the role of minister cannot be obtained just by knowing magic, and an inner thought confirms that this is the expected reaction. Arnold speculates that other ministers would be shocked if they knew that a 23-year-old girl had been appointed as a minister. The drummer is completely stunned by what is happening and exclaims indignantly. Arnold easily pronounces the phrase in the ancient language, making it clear that he speaks the ancient language. Namia answers in ancient, suggesting that the matter be discussed in that language as well. She is surprised, asking out loud if ancient languages are taught at the academy. Namia continues in the ancient language, explaining that she learned it from books, and Arnold is amazed at her abilities. She reasons that it is this knowledge that underlies magical spells, which causes even more respect from the minister. Drummer is delighted, and Arnold calls Namia almost a scholar of antiquities and asks if there are any other objections to her candidacy. Arnold suddenly cries out that even that isn't enough, continuing to point at Namia. A girl with silver hair sits among sunflowers and listens to an order about the need to maintain posture. She undergoes various tests, such as holding a book on her head and taking an eyesight test to meet strict requirements. A girl demonstrates her ability to ride a unicycle while maintaining balance. The woman is puzzled by the strangeness of the new rules, and the blonde man next to her confirms that they did not exist before. 2 hours later, the man, exhausted from training, admits his defeat in front of the girl, who stands confidently on the floor. The girl stands at the door, and the man, barely able to stand on his feet, listens to her talk about how they have known each other for a long time. The blonde is surprised, saying that he has never seen Namia so active before. The girl explains that she usually saves energy, but is glad that they have cleared up this small misunderstanding, and the guy is a little confused. The exhausted man asks to wait and asks the last question, standing in front of the girl and the blonde man. 3 observers on the sidelines notice with surprise that the man still does not give up. The blonde man approaches Minister Crowley with a proposal to stop, but the girl assures him that everything is fine. Minister Crowley asks the final question excitedly, asking about the recent amendments to 2 articles. The girl calmly lists the points and articles, and then adds an excerpt from the Constitution. The minister mentally acknowledges that the girl does not leave him the right to refuse, and admires her firmness. Minister Crowley shyly reaches out his hand to the girl, and she looks at him in surprise. Minister Crowley eagerly talks about future cooperation, and the blonde asks the girl to stay for discussion. The blonde thinks, but after a pause says that he will talk to the girl later. A girl with a question in her eyes stands among the flowers and thinks about finishing her 3 years of work as a low-ranking employee. A few days later, the castle is shown, and a message appears about her appointment as a minister. People discuss the announcement at the board, noticing the change in department name and the new minister Namiya from the Scroll Management Department. The crowd discusses how one can become a minister with such little experience, and one woman asks another to remember the rumors. Meanwhile, across the sea in the allied country of Kotalis, a new day begins. A young man sits on a bench in the park and enjoys the beautiful weather. He smiles and hopes to hear good news soon. A caption appears in the frame, indicating the allied state of Kotalis. Victor, with fish and a basket, greets the market residents, who recognize him. Victor asks Uncle Jeff about the condition of his back, and Uncle Jeff complains of pain, and the friend notices that Victor is always friendly. A friend reminds Victor that he moved here almost 3 years ago and asks if he worked in the Department of Magic Scrolls. Victor confirms with a smile that he served in the Scroll Management Department, and his full name and position appear on the screen. The friend puts his arm around Victor and asks why he doesn't stay here forever, hinting that he lives better here than in his own country, and stresses that he shouldn't worry about money since his father is the Minister of Finance. A friend suggests that Victor think about cases when people come into exile and then stay forever, and at that moment a boy runs up to them with a letter. The boy happily tells Victor that he has received a letter and hands him an envelope. Victor, opening the letter, reads it in surprise, and his friend is interested in the contents. Against the backdrop of a golden glow, a question about the truth of the departure sounds, and Victor turns to Namiya. Victor says that if Namiya is gone, their department might actually disappear. He places his hand on Namiya's head and asks her to work hard until he returns. Victor smiles and promises to save Namiya from Osun upon his return. Victor, turning to his friend, says that apparently he is not destined to move here. Victor announces with a smile that he is returning to Polarwood. Amidst the excitement and change, it is noted that the ceremony to appoint the Minister of the Scrolls Department went smoothly, although many questions remain. Namiya sits at her new desk, contemplating the fact that she is now the Minister of Scroll Management. She wonders if she is happy with her new position, and with a sparkle in her eyes she answers, "Of course she is." Her new position gives her access to classified materials from other departments, which is perceived as a free pass. Having to report directly to the Crown Prince made it much easier for her to access the information she needed. A salary increase brings special joy, and Namiya rejoices about it, standing in front of the gold coins. She mentally assures herself that it is not about money at all, but all for the sake of peace and finding her father. The head of the Magic Tower appears in her office and ironically asks if she is really happy with leading such a small department. Namiya is surprised by his appearance and notes that when she was a low-ranking employee, he never showed up here at all, but now he has become a frequent guest. There are drawings of magic circles on her desk, and she says that until yesterday she was busy creating scrolls, but now it had to be postponed. The head of the Magic Tower is amazed that she did it all by herself, and Namiya modestly confirms this. Namiya shows off a levitation scroll that she has simplified for ease of use. The young man demonstrates a scroll for strengthening the body, which, if used correctly, can even heal wounds. Namiya is asked if she really created all of these scrolls, and she excitedly confirms this. The head of the Magic Tower is amazed to realize that such magic is usually only possible after several years of training in the tower. He is amazed that he did not recognize her talent sooner and mentally admires Namiya's abilities. The head of the tower thinks that if the others see this, they will go crazy with envy. He asks how long she has been making scrolls, and Namiya replies that she started when she was 8 years old. The head of the Magic Tower is surprised by her age and does not understand why such a genius did not get into the Magic Tower, and Namiya explains that she had a poor family. Namiya explains that her mother disappeared when she was little, and her father raised her alone, but also disappeared 15 years ago. When asked where she lived before, Namiya replies that it was in the southern city of Arbin. The head of the Magic Tower says that it is time for him to leave, and Namiya calmly agrees. Namiya is mentally happy that he is finally leaving, and he accuses her of being heartless and suggests that she at least pretend that she is sorry. He announces that he will be away for a short while. The head of the magic tower hands Nami a scroll and asks her to always carry this gift with her to take care of herself until the next time they meet. Namia holds the gift in confusion and wonders why he even came. The flashback again shows Crowley talking eagerly about working together and the other man asking to stay. The blonde doubts and decides to talk later, and Namia watches him in surprise. Namia remembers that he wanted to say something back then and wonders what it could have been. Someone knocks on the door and Namia allows them to enter. A blonde man enters the office and introduces himself, reminding Namia of a bright moment from the past. Namia, getting up from the table, greets the prince, but he asks her not to get up. The prince notes that she is no longer so surprised when she sees his face, and Namia secretly admires him. She thinks that his beauty and excellent physique are completely to her taste. Namia remembers how unexpected his concern was for her, because before she only cared about others. The prince directly asks Namia if she wanted to marry the richest man. He sheepishly clarifies that if her words are still valid. The prince makes up his mind and asks her what she thinks of him. At this moment, someone watches their closeness with surprise from the threshold of the office. Namia asks him in confusion what he means, and at that moment, someone falls with a loud noise behind them. The prince admits that he is ready to marry her if she wants, leaving Namia completely confused. The prince says that Namia saved him twice and explains that he has been looking for her all this time to fulfill her wish given to her as a child. Namia recalls situations where the prince would show up with gifts and refuses the gems so that it doesn't look like bribery. The prince with the bouquet offers another gift, but Namia refuses, citing a lack of time to care for the flowers. He then takes out the food coupons, and Namia agrees to accept them because it is not a monetary gift. The prince knew in advance that Namia had a weakness for food and even specially bought 300 food coupons. Namia thanks the prince, happy that the coupons will last for almost a year. The prince smiles and says he is glad she liked it. Namia reflects that all this was done not out of sympathy, but out of a sense of duty, and is glad that she realized this before the misunderstanding arose. She experiences internal discomfort from her thoughts and feels embarrassed. Namia tries to pull herself together and get ready for work, promising herself not to worry about it anymore now. Namia clenches her fists and begins with gratitude, saying that she deeply appreciates the prince's feelings. She regretfully informs him that she has to refuse, which surprises him. Namia thanks the prince for remembering her words from childhood, and he asks her to wait. The prince, worried, asks if he can know the reason for the refusal, and Namia begins to explain. She admits that she wants to marry only the one she loves. The assistant, surprised, asks since when she has had such views, and reminds her that she was talking about marrying a rich man. The assistant declares that in the entire empire there is no more eligible bachelor than Prince Kiaros. Namia silently agrees that the assistant is telling the truth, but still has doubts. She thinks that asking her to marry you just because you are the best groom is weird. Namia sheepishly explains to the prince that by beloved she did not mean him, but simply believed that marrying for love makes people happy, to which he calmly replies that everything is fine. The girl watches the guy leave, and another young man politely pushes him out of the room. The girl sits on the throne, puzzled, with wide eyes, wondering why the guy looks like he just got beaten up. At the royal palace, they are loudly surprised and ask Kairos if he was really refused. One young man in despair asks another not to shout, and the other, in amazement, tries to object. The guy admits that he decided that his interlocutor and Miss Namia were already together. The guy recalls with a slight smile the old promise he made 15 years ago. The young man notes that for many people their situation will seem strange. The guy ponders whether he might have misunderstood the question and suggests that the girl doesn't like the idea of being limited. Another guy, with a smile and humour, offers to cancel the wedding reservation to free up the line for others. The blonde boy, in amazement, asks Kairos not to tell him anything further. The confused guy is asked if he really booked the wedding venue before the proposal, and he starts making excuses. Chase leaves with a smile, saying that he will take his leave upon first request. The fair-haired young man says that first love is always difficult to achieve, but asks not to console him as a loser. The guy asks in surprise what's going on, and the other guy replies that he wants to discuss something more important. The guy claims that he has entered a dark phase again. The other one doesn't believe it, because the dark phase should happen once in a lifetime, to which the guy confirms. That's how it is. The memory tells that on the day of Countess Torres's funeral, he stopped feeling anything, and could not use either his aura or magic. The fair-haired youth confirms that this is the dark phase, and considers it serious news for the imperial court. The guy, lost in thought, connects what is happening with the cries of evolution. In conclusion, it is assumed that the remnants of the organization that modified the monsters have probably reorganized. The guy says he will continue to investigate this case. The blonde advises Kairos to lie low due to the danger of being targeted during the dark phase. Kairos asks worriedly about the condition of His Majesty. The blonde smiles, assuring that despite the dark phase, he is fine and security has been increased. He puts his hands on Kairos' shoulders and says that too much has been piled on him. The guy reflects that he himself has healed well during his recovery and advises his friend to rest a little. Kairos replies that he understands. Despite the promise to rest, the guy decides not to leave everything unattended and sits thoughtfully on the throne. He realizes that it is dangerous to just wander around the palace, because if he tightens his security, everyone will find out about his dark phase. Kairos is determined to see that there is only one way out and looks at the photograph of the man with glasses. The girl walks down the hallway and wonders in her mind if she was too harsh yesterday. She recalls that even a marriage for love can end badly, citing her parents as an example. The girl reflects that, having become a minister, it has become easier for her to meet with representatives of the family. But there is no reason to get closer to the crown prince. She decides that now is not the time to think about it. Looking up at the door, she reminds herself that today is her first ministerial meeting. The girl enters the hall and announces that she is present by order of His Majesty. They ask her to come in, sit down, and begin the meeting, and she herself internally notes that she expected such a reception. Shown are the ministers on the left, health, public support, and civil engineering. It is noted that the atmosphere in the room is much colder than she expected, and the ministers of justice, education, and finance are sitting on the right. The blonde man apologizes that due to being busy, the meeting only happened now, and asks to allow them to introduce themselves to each other. Namia Loafi introduces herself as the new Minister of Scrolls and greets the others. One of the ministers is outraged and declares that a 23-year-old minister is impossible. Opponents are outraged that Namia was appointed immediately after the appointment, since they have 30 years of experience behind them. Namia is surprised that dessert is being served at a ministerial meeting and notices that no one is listening to her. Someone loudly disagrees, saying that Namia only has 4 years of experience and does not understand how she can be a minister. The head of the table asks, with an icy expression, whether his orders really require anyone's permission. The frightened ministers immediately add that something completely different was meant and begin to make excuses. He calmly says that he understands their concerns, but is confident that Namia Loafi is more than worthy of the post of minister. It is further specified that she has already passed the test of the Minister of Justice Crowley, but someone deep down considers him a useless person. The others note to themselves that the leader could never resist talent, and her qualifications are more than enough, which surprises Namia. Namia is surprised that the one who was against her before is now protecting her. She notes that the minister knows how to recognize real talent. At the table, they announce that the Minister of Justice tested Namia, and the head of the tower fully supported her. Everyone is surprised to think about the head of the tower, and in the memory, the eccentric old man chooses Namia, which causes confusion among those present. It is explained that the Scroll Management Department is the only link between the ruling family and the Magic Tower. The head clarifies that due to the importance of the department, their decision may violate generally accepted norms. He adds that full control over the department has been handed over to the ruling family and urges that this opportunity not be missed. If anyone wants to challenge the head of the tower, they can try, But the ministers present avoid-looking and remain silent, after which the head is glad that there are no objections. One of the female ministers says there are rumours of an unusually close relationship between Prince Kiros and Lady Loafi. Namia is indignant that her appointment has now been coupled with senseless rumours about personal feelings. The head of the table says with a smile that if the rumours are true, then there is nothing to worry about, since Namia has already refused the crown prince. He adds that Kiaros was so shocked by the rejection that he fell ill and went into seclusion, devastated by a broken heart. Namia is shocked that it's so serious and wonders how anyone even knew about it. The head of the table concludes that there were no personal feelings in Namia's appointment. He suggests closing the topic and moving on to discussing the main issue. Namia turns to the leader in confusion, and he apologizes for being so open about her relationship with Kairos. The leader explains that Kirosu is actually unwell, and his departure is not related to Namia, asking her not to worry, and she thanks him for her concern. Namia suddenly realizes that Kiaros is actually in a dark phase. She reflects that of course he is heartbroken because of the rejection and involuntarily feels guilty. In the end, Namia decides that, as His Majesty said, her mind is now only occupied with the transformation of the Scroll Department. The Scroll Management Department was renamed the Scroll Department after the transformation. After significantly reducing staff, Namia plans to split the 8 remaining employees into 2 teams. The candidates for leadership are the senior Anastasia and the senior Victor, who possess the necessary skills and experience. Despite her taciturnity, Anastasia explains tasks very well, and Namia learned a lot from her. The thought that Victor will soon return from his business trip gives Namia hope. Namia understands that she still needs to find a capable secretary. Since only senior employees remain in the team, she finds it inconvenient to assign secretary duties to them. She wonders if there is anyone younger and with the necessary abilities for this position. Namia sadly wonders who would want to work in their department. Unexpectedly, she discovers that Mr. Kiwon has reapplied for the job, contrary to her expectations. Namia looks at the documents on the table in surprise and realizes that she has found what she was looking for. She looks at Kiwon with enthusiasm and considers him an ideal candidate for a secretary. Several days pass, the setting and the narrative change. A woman at a desk reviews an application for re-employment. She is surprised that after all the events, leaving the empire seems in vain. The questionnaire under consideration is Kivon Artes, born November 2nd, 524, 1 year younger than Namia, has no family, citizenship of the Kingdom of Imot. Namia notes to herself that Kiwon is from the Imot Kingdom. A map appears, showing that the Kingdom of Immoth is a remote island nation in relation to the Polarwood Empire. It is specified that Imot is the homeland of the former empress, the mother of Crown Prince Kiaros. It is explained that Immoth is a country that has recently begun diplomatic relations with Polarwood, and little is known about it. Namia speculates that Kiwon's manner of speaking is due to the difference in culture and his unexpected comments. She comes to the conclusion that Kiwon, although strange, is not a bad person, is smart and can be useful under guidance. During the war, the Kingdom of Imot declared neutrality and left the battlefield. Namia is sure that since Kiwon is from Imota, he has no connection with those who started the war. She thinks Kiwon is the ideal candidate for a secretary, young, easy to manage, seems competent, and is not connected to the aristocracy. She is tempted by this prospect, but she regrets that the former minister did not tell her about it earlier. However, this minister only introduced Kiwon and immediately disappeared, leaving doubts in the minds of those around him. Namia notes that the time is almost here, preparing for the event. The room begins to discuss the news, and the main character quickly asks what exactly happened. People are gossiping about Namia Loafi, the new minister, and spreading rumors about her relationship with Prince Kiaros, but they quickly clarify that everything is not as they say. At the ball, everyone is shocked by the news that the prince was rejected, and he is trying to keep the man who rejected him close to him. The main character feels uncomfortable because of the rumors that have spread. Someone asks if the prince really has locked himself in and is refusing to eat. He is asked not to ask because he cannot answer this question. The guy shyly asks not to ask him anymore. The company insistently demands that you stop being secretive and tell everything. The boy, in despair, swears that he cannot tell how far the prince has gone and claims that he is now heartbroken. The main character is surprised to realize that the rumors turned out to be true. He reflects that this is actually a good excuse and works well. The main character promises to himself that he will not forget Chase Wood. Kayvon enters the scroll department and is greeted with a friendly smile. Scrolls Minister Namia Loafi meets with Kayvon and says that the processes are still a little unsettled. Kayvon notices that Namia Loafi looks especially radiant today, and she informs him of a temporary workstation she has prepared for him. Kayvon decides that despite his personal feelings, Namia Loafi needs to be kept a close eye on. Some people are suspicious of Namia Loafi, wondering why she is always involved in everything and is an effective problem solver. The hero wonders if saving her was part of the plan in advance, and realizes that even helping the Empress was in order to get closer to him. He begins to think that perhaps Namia Loafi is not an ally after all. He concludes that he cannot let his guard down and agrees to use the offered table. Namia Loafi thanks Kayvon for coming back. She admits that, given his past failures, she didn't expect him to return after simple errands. Namia Loafi says the Scrolls department will now be completely different and promises to create a system that everyone will want to work in. She asks Kayvon to try to stay longer this time. Kayvon confirms that he understands and thinks to himself that he himself intended to stay for a long time. He ponders that if Namia Loafi is an enemy, he will keep a good eye on her, and if she is an ally, he will be able to protect her. Kayvon vows to work there until he gets fired, expecting it to help build trust. Namia is surprised by the sincerity of the vow and notes that she likes vows, while Kayvon is confused by her reaction. Namia asks to back up the oath with life, honor, and country, and Kayvon is struck by the seriousness of what is happening, thinking about the work ahead. Namia hands Kayvon a temporary employment contract, which surprises him. She asks him to sign a contract, and Kayvon is internally surprised that they want to intimidate him with this document. Namia officially announces Kayvon as her secretary after signing the contract. Namia asks Kayvon if everything is okay, and Kayvon thinks that she is incredibly smart and may have figured out who he really is. Kayvon hears Namia suggest that they communicate informally, since he is her subordinate and younger in age, and realizes that he actually indicated a younger age. Namia allows him to address her informally, and Kayvon thanks her for it. Kayvon decides to start with a simple task, and his colleague cheerfully agrees to send the letters, and he thinks that the secretary's job is not that difficult. Kayvon is surprised to see a huge stack of papers on the table and can't believe his eyes. Namia says with a smile that since it's his first day, let's start slowly, and he is surprised at her understanding of this word. Kairos almost says the important words, wondering if sending Kayvon to the Scrolls department was the right decision because he wasn't sure about it yet. Namia Loafi formally introduces herself as the Minister of Scrolls and explains that due to personnel changes, the budget request was sent late. Namia requests an increase in the Scroll department's budget by 250%, which is reflected in the document with a sharp increase in the amount. Finance Minister Luther Arvin reads the Scrolls department budget document with a tired smile. The Minister of Finance says with a smile that the visitor has arrived just in time and invites him to come in. Juan Loafi enters and stops in front of the doors. Juan sheepishly asks the minister why he was called, and he replies that it is nothing serious. Juan is worried that he made a mistake in the report since he always assigned it to that girl before. He recalls that he always delegated the work on reports to Namia. Juan is upset that because Namia ran away, he had to prepare a report all night. And it was terrible, because if Namia was there, everything would have gone differently. The minister asks if Juan is really Namia Loafi's brother, and he sheepishly confirms, although he is not sure. The minister announces that the talk will be about Namia Loafi becoming the Minister of Scrolls, and Hwan asks again in shock, amazed to hear this news. The minister explains that this was announced some time ago. His interlocutor asks in surprise whether Hwan has read the notices, because everyone, even those abroad, already knows this news, and Hwan tries to laugh it off. Hwan says that Namia is not fit to be a minister and wonders how she did it, and the finance minister wonders what the fuss is about. The Minister of Finance says that Namia is smart but very lazy, was always at the bottom of the academy rankings and barely passed the exam, and doubts whether the Minister of Justice could have made a mistake. It is suggested that perhaps Namia has talent that she relies on too much, ignoring the effort. The minister emphasizes that he values hard work and character above all else. The minister points out recent errors in the report to Hwan, but turns a blind eye to them for the sake of his past merits, and Hwan looks at the corrected report in shock. The minister ends the conversation and lets Hwan go, who happily says goodbye. The minister reflects on the fact that not everyone can be a minister, and this is contrary to his principles. He decides that he must do everything to ensure that Namia resigns as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Kayvon, who became secretary only 2.5 hours ago, mentally calls for help. Namia, with a smile, makes it clear to Kayvon that the report needs to be redone again. Kayvon failed to pass any of the document checks and stands silently in front of a beaming Namia. He reflects that all the documents that came to him as the Crown Prince were always pre-processed, and he did not expect such a check. Namia points out errors in the documents and offers to explain in more detail, but Kayvon replies that this is not what he is talking about. Kayvon clarifies whether it is really necessary to correct small details such as time and day markings, since it does not affect the essence. He adds that these documents have already been reviewed by management, and reanalyzing past papers seems ineffective to him. Namia suddenly asks Kayvon why all the uniforms are standardized, catching him off guard. Namia agrees with him that reviewing past documents is ineffective. Minor details can be skipped, but if small changes are constantly made to the designations. As a result, it will be difficult to understand the original essence of the document. Namia then reminds them that they are currently in an unusual situation, and Kayvon recalls that the group's previous leader was executed for attempting to slander the Empress. Namia asks how these events are connected and wonders if Kayvon ever thought about such a possibility. Namia explains that the people who threatened Her Majesty may have used official documents to transmit encrypted messages. It is shown that small deviations from form and differences in writing or notation could have been a means of secret communication. Kayvon understands that such a version is quite possible, and Namia asks not to take her hypothesis too seriously. Namia adds that if everything is checked carefully, it can reduce the burden on Prince Kairos. She reflects that, having become a minister, she now understands how much information comes to His Highness. Namia realizes that in her position she cannot complain and must achieve results that meet expectations. Kayvon says they won't even have time to sleep and agrees that any help they can give the prince would be good. Namia dreams that when the prince finds out about her help, he will definitely reward her because she had her own plan. Namia asks Kayvon if he's okay, and he sheepishly replies that he is. She wonders why Kayvon is so red. Namia panics, thinking that it might seem like she's forcing her ideas on Kayvon, and worries that she's becoming a terrible boss. She suggests that Kayvon take a rest if he is tired, but he replies that he is fine, and Namia herself is glad that he is showing interest in work. Namia suddenly hears her stomach growling and realizes that it's time for lunch. She muses that she should take care of Kayvon on his first day on the job, even though she has always eaten alone and is unsure of what to do. Namia hesitantly turns to Kayvon, getting his attention. She asks him if he is hungry and, if he doesn't mind, invites him to have lunch together. Kayvon thinks the offer is a bit odd and declines, saying he's not hungry. Kayvon is surprised by the strange sound and realizes it is his stomach growling. He is internally shocked that the Crown Prince is publicly experiencing hunger. Kayvon sheepishly tries to justify himself, but Namia realizes that he is indeed hungry and is surprised by his inattention to her words. Namia enthusiastically promises Kayvon that she has a lot of money and will take care of him so that he doesn't have to worry. The Imperial Palace contains many rooms for officials. Kayvon and Namia sit down to dinner at the Empire's exclusive restaurant, run by the Imperial chef. Namia explains that they serve whole sets of dishes here, and there is no need to worry about the order in which they are served, and Kayvon wonders if she cares or is just teasing him. Namia admits that the place is too expensive for regular employees, but will pay for lunch at the expense of Kayvon's first day of work. She is pleased to use the food coupons that the Crown Prince once gave her, delighted at the bargain. Namia says that she feels a little sad eating alone and offers to treat Kayvon more often, and he mentally notes her good appetite and thanks her, but prefers solitude. Namia asks in surprise if he really enjoys eating alone while enjoying delicious food. Kayvon admits to himself that it would be nice to have dinner together sometimes, but he feels a little sorry, and Namia asks him to be careful with the spoon. Kayvon reacts sheepishly to her words, thinking that she wants to dine with him alone, and Namia clarifies that she meant the dropped spoon and is glad that he remembered about informal communication. The girl sits at the table and says that she is using the food coupons that the Crown Prince gave her. She explains to the boy with glasses that most of the dishes here are for 2 people, so she can't use the coupons for herself only, and now he understands this. The boy suggests inviting someone else, for example a friend, instead of him. The girl replies with surprise that she doesn't have a single friend. He remembers another guy and asks if he is a friend, and the guy himself is indignant, calling himself a rival. The girl is embarrassed and is told that she could have lunch with the Crown Prince since he gave her the coupons. She looks thoughtfully at the guy's profile, where it is indicated that he has no family. The girl shares that she used to live in Baron Lofi's estate and asks to listen to her while he eats. She recalls that he asked her why she was good at official paperwork even though he didn't have a teacher, and he was surprised by her knowledge. The girl replies that her brother works in the Ministry of Finance and she often helped him. Kayvon speculates that the girl often processed official documents to help her brother, and because of this, he could be accused of corruption. The girl takes his hand and admits that she knows about the ban, but that's how the circumstances turned out. Kayvon is surprised when he hears that she helped her brother so that they could have dinner together. The girl recalls that that dinner with her brother was not the happiest. She happily notes that dining in company is better than dining alone. Kayvon shares that ever since he left home, he always eats alone, even though he no longer sees unpleasant faces. The girl is surprised and asks why he is telling her this. She wonders why she ended up blurting it all out. Remembering Kayvon, who is without his family in a foreign country, the girl feels a kinship and an unconscious closeness with him. She realizes that Kayvon probably isn't interested in her family matters, and that makes her a little uncomfortable. The girl asks him to forget what she just said and promises that she will no longer invite him to have dinner together. Kayvon thinks that if in the future she suddenly doesn't want to eat alone, she should tell him. She says she will keep him company. The girl admits that sometimes she feels like sharing lunch with someone. Kayvon is embarrassed and surprised by her words, thinking they are cool, and she asks if she is a good boss. He wonders if this is touching. The girl looks puzzled and wonders why he looks upset, then suggests that they come back if they have finished eating. They walk together through the Great Hall, heading towards the exit. She looks at Kayvon and notices that he looks okay now. The girl wonders to herself if she interfered too much earlier. Kayvon scolds himself for not being able to contain his emotions and is surprised that someone like him would get so upset. He remembers the girl talking about her family and thinks she could cry at any moment. Kayvon's heart starts beating fast again, and the girl suggests going for coffee together. He replies that he will buy the coffee himself because he can't keep getting free food, and takes out his wallet. Kayvon asks if she always wanted to become a minister, and the girl replies that she did dream of it for a while, although the chances were slim. She admits that she is happy with her position, but wants to get even higher. And Kayvon is surprised because she is already a minister. Kayvon asks the girl to step aside, noting that she arrived just in time. A group of people appears, led by a guy who says that they arrived first. New people approach another group and ask to give up their chairs because their group is larger. The guy asks with a grin if they are from the Scrolls department, and then mockingly says that their department only has one break, there are few employees, and no one would want to work there. The heroes hide behind a column. Kivon calls what is happening an outright mockery and explains why he wants to go higher. Kiwon thinks that the Imperial Palace should be one whole, but in reality it is different. The girl grabs Kiwon's hand and asks in surprise what he is going to do. She asks, alarmed, if he really wants to act so childishly, and Kiwon explains that he just wanted to say a few words. The girl asks if he imagines himself as an emperor. She objects and tells him not to interfere in this situation. Kiwon explains that even if he corrects them, nothing will change, and the girl says that all this is inevitable. Kiwon is indignant and asks what exactly is inevitable, adding that they are all government employees. One of the other employees states that they are paid the same and their department is slow and disorganized, and asks if that is what Kiwon thinks. The girl emphasizes that other departments have similar thoughts. The diagram explains that on paper all departments are considered equal, but in reality there is a power gap and a pyramidal hierarchy of departments. The girl tells Kiwon that their department will always be treated with prejudice because they are at the lowest level. She recalls that the department's leadership was fired, and one of them even tried to slander the Empress. She is outraged that Kiwon will simply watch with his hands folded. The girl's internal monologue: she is surprised that Kiwon continues to insist, and perhaps other people's problems are not alien to him, or he just has such a character. She realizes that Kiwon once intervened to save her. The girl suggests that he cannot put up with injustice, and Kiwon says that even without direct intervention, their presence will affect the situation. Kiwon notes that it doesn't matter how the Scroll Department is treated since she is the minister, but she doesn't think it will improve the department's reputation. The girl thinks that if she takes the initiative now, she will be ridiculed in the future, so it is better to be patient and wait until everything ends on its own. Someone present apologizes, and others begin to find out what exactly he said, trying to figure out who is to blame. The girl in glasses fearfully asks to take back the words she said, which confuses others. The main characters notice the girl and wonder if she is from the Bureau of Scrolls, noting her unusual glasses. The girl identifies her as one of the group's newly appointed leaders. She introduces herself as Senior Anastasia Kane, a reserve civil servant with 9 years of experience. The guy asks her again because her voice is too quiet, and she remains embarrassed and silent. She is asked to speak clearly if she wants to say something, and she tries to collect her thoughts. Anastasia calmly tells him to take his words back, otherwise in a month the interlocutor will go completely bald. One of the characters recalls a novel about a witch who can cast curses if she knows a person's name, and asks questions about the curse in surprise. Anastasia says decisively that it will be interesting to test it on him, and names his name and department. The guy anxiously asks how she knew his name, surprising the others. The girl with short hair says that the Scroll Management Department is pathetic, but immediately corrects herself that this is not what she meant. She yells at the boy that he should be ashamed to work under Minister Namia. They remember that despite her youth, the heroine is incredibly diligent. No matter what she is taught, she quickly becomes a professional. Even in a department that is considered lazy, she always showed determination and was not complacent. The heroine is surprised and did not expect that the elder Anastasia thinks so well of her. Anastasia angrily says that the heroine now works even better than her, although she herself has been in the service for 9 years, and condemns the guy for criticizing others instead of his own work. The colleagues ask the guy named Adan to stop, noticing that the situation has been resolved, and offer to return. Kiwon asks the heroine if such talk about the Scroll Department upsets her. Kiwon clarifies that he means the rumors that are being spread about their department. The heroine admits that this attitude angers her and promises that she will make everyone pay for it because she knows everyone by name, and Kiwon is surprised by her memory. When asked how she will make everyone pay, the heroine confidently answers, "With money, of course." Ki-won wonders if this is blackmail and thinks that there are several factors that determine the authority of a department. The first factor is the size of the department. The second factor is budget. The heroine reflects that no matter what you want to prove, money matters a lot. She tells Ki-won that she plans to provide their department with a good budget. The heroine joyfully exclaims, "A lot of money." Ki-won listens with excitement and notes to himself, "Don't get tired and don't think about leaving." He notices that it is already late and stares at the heroine, watching as his heartbeat quickens. The heroine declares that the break is over and calls for Ki-won to run faster, and he wonders why they are suddenly running. At this time, someone else calls out to Minister Namia near the clock tower. The heroine and Ki-won run to the door, breathing heavily after running fast. Ki-won says that she doesn't need to rush so much to keep up with her work schedule, and the heroine believes that as a minister, she has a responsibility to set an example. Ki-won admits that due to his lack of experience, he needs to work hard. Ki-won supports the girl and says that she is doing well. The girl remembers the words she heard in the cafe, and Ki-won advises her not to take them to heart. Ki-won clenches her fist and says that they only talk about her like that because they don't see how hard she works. He notes that even members of the royal family face gossip and is surprised by his own words. Ki-won reflects that his job is to watch over the heroine, not to console her. The heroine anxiously asks Ki-won if everything is okay with him and if he needs to go to the hospital. Ki-won is silent to himself, thinking that he would like to say something encouraging, but he doesn't know how to choose the words. The heroine thinks with a smile that eating together is better than eating alone. Ki-won admits that he couldn't say it before, but he really appreciates today's lunch. The girl shyly says that she would like to go to lunch together more often. Ki-won agrees to negotiate, and the girl admits that she was afraid to interfere too much, but now she is happy. The girl wonders what brought her colleagues here, noting that it was noisy outside, and realizes that her bait worked. She, smiling, decides to see what she managed to find and catch. The girl with glasses justifies what she said earlier, claiming that it was said in the heat of the moment. Finance Minister Luther Arvin says he needs to speak with Minister Namia.